we go. Okay.
I'm not sure if Dan Delia is on yet.
Let's see, we have 1, 2. We have me, Dan Cruzan, Deb Zukowski, Rebecca Harriman Stites, John Voros, and I know I saw Debbie Lideline. Yep. So yeah, we're missing Dan Delia, unless he's on another screen that I don't see. We'll get.
Here he comes. Here he comes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Just let him in.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get this show on the road. I'm going to start recording in addition to live streaming. Okay, so we'll call to order the Board of Education meeting of January 19th, 2021. This is a virtual meeting, and it is regarding, it's both a Board of Education regular meeting as well as our budget, start of budget workshops. We'll start off just by letting you know that we're recording the meeting, and I will pull up the flag so that we can say the Pledge of Allegiance together. If I can. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. All right. If you'll join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. And then that will bring us to our commitment to community. And I'll ask if Ms. Lideline could read our statement, our pledge to the community.
Okay. As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Thank you. So I know we read those, we do both the pledge and read our commitment to community for every meeting, but for it feels especially important for this meeting, and we all read it, and I think we take it very seriously, but I appreciate that we do have that reminder at the beginning of all of our meetings. So that'll bring us to our consent agenda. I think we need a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the donation to Newtown High School and the correspondence report.
I think, yeah, maybe, I don't think we have the correspondence report. So without the correspondence report?
Yeah, please withdraw the correspondence report. My apologies.
No, that's, yeah. So Mr. Delia makes the motion.
Second.
And Mr. Cruzan seconds the motion. So it's to approve the donation to the Newtown High School. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Oh, is there anybody opposed? No. Okay, so I counted all 7 of us. That's unanimous. And that brings us to our public participation. I don't know if we have people on the line. I see. I'll open up this period for our public participation in which you can address items on the agenda. We just ask that you be respectful in your comments and limit them to 3 minutes. And there will be a second public participation later at which you could bring up items that are not on the agenda. So is there anybody at this time who would like to address the board regarding items on the agenda? If you can unmute yourself with a *6 if you're on the phone. I don't think we have many people on the phone. All right, so we'll close out public participation. And that'll bring us to our reports, starting with the chair report. So I will just report that the Legislative Council's Charter Revision Charge Committee is considering the recommendations that we voted on at our last meeting, and that meeting will be tomorrow evening at, I believe it's 6 p.m. And then following that, the full Legislative Council will be considering our CIP again, and hopefully they'll come to a conclusion on that. And I think there's a little more update on that, and I'll leave that to Mr. D'Elia a little bit later. And then I volunteered us to do the legislative breakfast for CABE Area 5 again this year. This is something we've done every year. This year it will be without the breakfast. It'll be just legislative discussion. And it's essentially a time when board members from districts all around this area can speak with legislators about what the upcoming legislative agenda is for this year. It's a biennial budget, and this is the first of the 2 years, so they'll be setting the budget, and it's a long session this year, so should be an interesting discussion. That's February 1st at 8 a.m. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions before we move on? Sensing none, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Rodriguez.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Koo. I know we are back in school, our 7 through 12, today being the first day. And I've heard some really positive comments, and checking in with both schools seem to go rather well. I want to thank our staff, our leaders, and our Whitson's Food Service who prepared all of those grab-and-go lunches for our students today. A reminder again that we are monitoring cases and of course the quarantining that has gone on much of this year, and that hasn't changed. So we will be displaying our information as we have in the past on our dashboard on the website. So I've put a communication out to parents as well as staff on that. And then finally, just a very quick reminder that tomorrow is an early release for all Newtown students. Our middle school and high school will release at 11:30 to allow for the rest of elementary and Reed to dismiss an hour later. So welcome to tonight and the beginning of our budget season. That's all I have this evening.
Here we go. Any questions or comments? All right. So we'll move on to committee reports, and I know there are a couple. Why don't we start with curriculum and instruction? Mr. Voros, do you have an update?
Yes, very briefly. We met and we were presented the grade 1 and 2 reading and writing curriculum, the minutes of which you've received, and will be discussed on the 2nd of February, not this evening, since this is a budget evening. Also, Frank Caro presented his K-5 pilot math program. That also has been forwarded to you, and that will also be addressed on the 2nd of February. And that concludes this report. Thank you.
Thank you. We might have to think about that date. I think the 2nd of February is our budget adoption evening, so we might have to think about the dates on those a little bit, but it's up and coming. We'll get to it. And I think the CIP Finance Facilities Subcommittee met. And Mr. D'Elia, do you have an update for us?
Yeah, I have a lot to update the board. You all received a letter that I would like to send, I plan to send to the Chair of Legislative Council regarding the Head of Meadow Lighting Project. Bob Gerbert, Tanya Vadas, and Dr. Rodrigue were able to work out an agreement where we could actually absorb the cost of that project in our current budget and future budgets with zero impact on the budget based on the net metering. So I'm gonna send a letter to Legislative Council recommending that they remove that from that 450,000 from the CIP, which will have a definite positive impact for the taxpayers and on the CIP. So that's the first thing. A couple of other things that we discussed at the CIP was our food program. We're looking to extend the contract one more year. And I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention and discuss it with you if anybody wanted to talk about it. But there's been, I think Tanya can elaborate on this a little bit, but there's been the state has made it possible for us to extend that contract one more year because of what's been going on, and they've been very good to us during these difficult times. I think that's pretty much it. We talked about COVID expenses, but that'll be later in the meeting. And I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Does anybody have any questions? Comments? I'll ask Mr. D'Elia for the virtual net metering and the balancing out of the project on the Head of Meadow lights. That is a result of it's sort of, my understanding is it's sort of like having solar panels, like the company will install for a cost, and then you pay the cost over several years, but you're also getting the benefit of the energy savings. So it somehow balances out. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's very complicated. Tanya can definitely, right, Tanya, you can testify to that. But we invest in solar farms, and then whatever we don't use in electricity gets pushed into the grid, and we get a credit for that. And it turns out the financing for this project would cost us about $800 a month on our electric bill to Head of Meadow, and right now we're currently estimating, I believe, around $900 a month in credits, give or take. Don't take my, it's not exact, but so the net effect would be almost a zero cost. Also, I believe Eversource is offering us little or 0% financing for 6 years, as well as a COVID, and Tanya, if I'm wrong, please jump in, as well as we're going to get a COVID, somewhere around $15,000 COVID credit if we do it before June 1st. So there's a lot of incentives to do this right now. And the net would be a removal of $450,000 from the CIP.
Okay.
Tanya, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I just want to add that the big savings really comes from the kilowatt reduction after we replace all these lighting fixtures. And Bob and I were looking at the numbers, and it could be upward about 30% reduction in kilowatts, which also relates to the supply and generation portion of the bill, which will lower that. Offset with the virtual net metering, which Dan, you were correct about the solar farms. It looks like a win-win to take that off of the CIP, and I believe that our budget can absorb that.
And so I'm going to just send that letter to Paul. I've already given him a heads up, but I wanted to make sure I ran it by everybody on the board before I sent the letter. And then they're going to discuss it because the CIP is really in their hands right now. So it's really, the CIP is not really in our hands at this point. So we felt like that was kind of the best, or I felt like that was the best way to handle that through our discussions.
Okay, great. Thank you. So essentially, if anybody has an objection, now is the time to say your piece. Otherwise, Dan will be sending that letter to, and I believe everybody's seen the letter. So that'll go out either this evening or tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'll send it out tonight after the meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. That's good news. All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? No. All right. Were there any other committee reports or liaison activities? Yes, Mr. Kusan.
Communications met.
Oh, good.
We met last Monday, not yesterday, but a week ago yesterday. We discussed our technology newsletter, which should be coming to the board shortly. It was supposed to come this meeting, but got delayed because of holidays and trying to meet with a couple groups of people for a couple of the articles. We also discussed timing for our budget newsletter, which we're still aiming for the end of March for that one. And we set our schedule for the next year. I think that covers everything.
Great. Thank you. So we look forward to seeing that coming up. And any other liaison activities or subcommittees?
Yes, I have a report.
Yeah, Mr. Delia.
We had an Ed Advance board meeting, quite enlightening, and I shared with the board everything that Ed Advance does for the schools. I was actually quite taken back by the amount of services that they provide and how much they do. I do want to share with the board that Ed Advance has been hit by COVID as far from a financial point of view, and they have to they're running a significant deficit, and they're laying off employees, which I was sad to hear. But they have to, because there's just, due to circumstances, the revenue's not there. So that was a hard meeting, but I wanted to share that with you. And I also wanted the board to be aware of everything that Ed Advance does for the local schools. It's quite a list. So that's it for me.
It might be, I know they provide a list. Do board members get a mailed list of what Ed Advance does, or does that not go to our board members?
I've never seen that, but I can ask.
Oh, I think they will eventually provide one to you, I think, and then it might be useful to share it with the board. I never did that, but it might be nice to share that with the board.
Well, you mean the list of everything, all the services they provide?
Yeah.
That was Kathy sent that out, Dr. Koo.
Okay.
I think maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe it's something else that you're referring to, but I pulled it off of a PowerPoint from the meeting just because I wanted everybody to see it, because I thought it was really impressive. It's 2 pages of wonderful things that they do for everyone. So, but the long story short is that the COVID has really hit them from a revenue standpoint, and they can't continue without having to, unfortunately, make some cuts.
Yeah.
So that's it for me on that.
All right. Thank you. And then Mr. Voros, was there something else you wanted to add?
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to talk about it, but very quickly, I would like to say that some board members and myself attended, thanks to Jillian and Dr. Longabuco for providing the schedule for us, capstone projects that the seniors have done. And I was particularly pleased to be part of an hour-and-a-half session of 3 of them presenting projects, and this is the beautiful part, that they are passionate about because they chose the subject matter. So it's going to be so wonderful for us to be able to see next year and then the years after how these capstone projects develop, because there's fabulous potential here for children to learn. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Thank you, Ms. Clerk, for providing that information, and Mr. Voros for attending. It's good stuff.
Can I add my 2 cents here?
Yes, Mr. DeLeo.
I just wanted to share that I received a nice email from an administrator that, and I'm not going to call out the administrator because but anyways, about a capstone project that my son did, and it really meant a lot. And I think that those touches really go a long way as far as connecting with the community. And I just wanted to say, those types of things are really going to make a difference in both the families' lives and the children's lives. And these capstones really seem to be something that's the kids, when they're presenting their passion, I think, and then it's recognized, I think that's a wonderful thing. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so that is a great segue into our high school representative reports. So Mr. Jerfy and Ms. Clore, do you have some information to share with us?
Good evening, board members and Dr. Rodrigue. We finally got back to school today, as you guys know, and I personally found it to be so exciting. I was so happy to be fully back in school again, and all the students that I talked to felt the same way, and they were all really glad to be back. Classes felt they felt a lot more fun and energetic today, and I hope it stays that way. I remember my Spanish class in particular, which Jillian is also a part of, was in such a good mood. Everyone was very excited to be back, and I think it's the first time since March, I believe, so that was nice. I asked some students how they felt about the distancing, and I got the responses that I expected. In classes, distancing is good, and teachers have asked us what they can do to make it more comfortable for everyone. And in general, they have been very accommodating. Students are a little bit more concerned about the hallways. Obviously, there are a lot of students in there at the same time, and it can get pretty crowded. Also, sports will be starting up again. I believe winter sports practices began today, and all sports except for wrestling, competitive cheer, and dance will be able to practice as normal. Those groups will only be allowed to do small group conditioning. Another thing that I would like to speak on is the use of school messenger this year. I personally am really liking it, and I find it very helpful to be updated on pretty much everything going on at the school. And that's pretty much all I have.
I will, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I will continue off what Rochelle said. I was the same way, so happy to be back today. I know I said last meeting that it was like the first day, like it felt like the first day because we were going back to hybrid since Thanksgiving, but like today really felt like the first day because it was the first time I even saw some people since last March, since the pandemic started, and it really brought us back to some normalcy, which was like greatly appreciated. Like I've never been so happy just to be sitting back in a normal classroom with all of the students again. I was also very surprised when I pulled into the parking lot today. Unfortunately, it was back to the heavier traffic, but you take what you get. And I was very surprised. I definitely thought more people would join cohort D, but a lot of people were in school today. And so I really appreciate that some of the teachers took initiative and asked us how we were feeling and if we were comfortable, because I think they saw that like the classes were really full. And for example, in my American government class today, my teacher really wanted us to get back to group work because it was something we really missed on the online classes, but she made sure to make sure the groups were people we were sitting close by so we didn't have to move around and we weren't feeling uncomfortable moving around the classroom and talking to people that weren't in our like contact tracing bubble, if that makes sense. And in Spanish, like Rochelle said, our teacher had us fill out an anonymous questionnaire in the beginning of class, which just asked us 3 questions. 1, like how we were feeling to be back. 2, if we felt comfortable. And then 3, what she could do to help us like feel more comfortable in class. And I just really appreciate her taking the time to do that because I know people adjust differently. And I think that was really great that she did that. And anonymously, so you didn't really know that someone said, oh, I'm not comfortable with talking or that. And she also told us like her guidelines for how she wanted class to go and like mask rules and all of that. So that was great. classes also were shortened. We were back on a rotating 50-minute class schedule. So it went from 85 minutes to 50 minutes. So I think teachers are really going to have to, classes went by really quick today because like Rochelle said, it was really energetic, fun move. We were all back in person. So I think teachers are going to have to go back almost and work on reducing their agenda for the day to keep it into the 50 minutes, because I found that at a lot of classes, the teachers were like, wow, time's up already, because the class would just go by so fast. After fifth period, we at 12:30, students went home for lunch, and sixth period class was remote. And I have to say, I was very pleasantly surprised to see in the lobby all of the cafeteria staff set up the lunch, the grab and go lunch program in the lobby. I originally thought you'd have to go to one of the cafeterias, which can be a little bit out of the way because it's not as close to the parking lot. But they set up the tables with all the different meals clearly labeled, like ready to hand out in the big bags in the lobby, which could not have been any more convenient for all of the students. So that was great. And to see at the end of the day. As for sports, like Rochelle talked about, they did start today at 3:30. And I think the top concern, not the top concern, but one of the concerns there was that students would be going home and coming back to school for practice. But one of the positives that a lot of them gave back to me was that you don't have to bring your equipment to school, so you don't have to worry about going to the locker room or finding space for that. And you also don't have to worry about changing after school, because that was one of the problems with fall sports, was whether or not to open locker rooms, because they tend to be packed at the end of the day. But now that we're home, you can do everything at home before you return back, which I think is also more convenient, and it alleviates a little bit of the stress in the mornings. They also announced last Thursday, I believe, that each season would be 12 games long, with no more than 2 games maximum a week, and the final tournaments will start March 15th and until March 28th. And then Unified Sports is going to have their winter season. It got approved, which is also great news, and they're having a meeting tomorrow night to hear more about that. And then finally, to end on a light note, some happy news. Blue and Gold Stadium, our home football stadium, was named the best high school football stadium in Connecticut by a ranking, I believe, called Stadium Talk. So I guess we have a pretty cool stadium, which is great.
Who knew? The things you take for granted, right?
Exactly.
Are there any questions for our student representatives? No, Rochelle, I was wondering, you mentioned School Messenger. Could you just describe a little bit about what School Messenger is for those who don't know, and what you said it was appealing to you? What is it that appeals to you?
Oh, so it's an app on your phone. I believe my teacher had us sign up for it, my math teacher. And we just kind of get all these notifications, a lot of the announcements, like some of the announcements that Dr. Longabuco made this morning. The information about sports, some of that information came from there. And so it's a really nice way. I don't really have to go out of my way to look for things or hear about things from random places, because it's kind of all coming to me already. So I really like that.
Got it. Centralized information.
And teachers can also send out assignments on there as well.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you for those reports. It's good to hear your update on what it's like getting back into school with everybody in at the same time. That's good to hear. All right, we shall move on to our financial report. And I think we'll put a motion on the table to get that going.
I move that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending December 31, 2020.
Second.
All right, so Mr. DeLeo makes the motion. Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. And then
I'd like to speak to my motion if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I just want to get the CIP spent a great deal of time working with Tanya on this, and we covered a lot of detail. So I'm going to kind of give you a few highlights, and then Tanya's going to jump in and close the show. The overall position has changed from a negative $400,000 399,303 to a positive 136,982, due to two factors. First, the town's capital non-recurring fund has been applied to the Board of Education expenditures in the amount of $400,000, and it has been applied directly to technology equipment. The municipal portion of the Corona Relief Grant that related to the Board of Education expenditures, and this was submitted by the town, was applied to plant supplies, offsetting the negative balance. There were over $55,000 in emergency repairs at the high school. The report also includes $96,810 in transfers related to teacher reassignments. And it appears that COVID expenditures have kind of leveled off, but we do anticipate another order for shields. The school provided shields to every teacher. I believe that's right, Tanya? And so there might be another additional.
Yes, that's correct. We provided one desk shield to every single staff member.
Yeah, I think it was like 800 shields or something of that nature.
800 shields, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I've pretty much covered everything. Tanya, you want to jump in and take over for me?
I think that was spot on, Dan. Thank you very much. I guess that concludes the financial report. Now, so we had the transfers and we did have the two expenditure adjustments. So that was spot on. Thank you. I just want to say I really appreciate spending all the time with the CFF committee. I really appreciated it, and we did a very deep dive, as Dan said. So I'm going to try to keep it somewhat brief tonight, just out of respect for time. So
that's it for me. And if anybody hasn't, Tanya can take over. Or if anybody has any questions, or Dr. Koo, feel free to take charge.
Is there more to go into in the report or no?
Well, I have my financial report that I was going to present and put up so everybody could see it. Like I said, I'll try to make it brief. I was going to highlight some of the sub accounts like I typically do. If you choose to table that, that's fine. You know, out of respect for time, it's up to you.
No, yeah, why don't we do that? Well, and then we'll have questions if there are any questions after that. Just keeping in mind that,
I know we have a heavy agenda, so
yeah. But yeah, I don't think we can afford to just skip through the financial report. I think we should have a little bit of background information would probably be good.
Okay. Good.
So do you need to share your screen?
Yes. Can you make that available?
Yeah, let me see. I think it should be.
Okay. Is that sharing?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'll just start by saying that during the month of December, the Board of Education spent approximately $7 million, $5.8 million on salaries, and $1.2 million on all other objects. This month, we had 3 payrolls during the month. And like Mr. Delia said, we did have some expenditure transfers, and that was to the town's capital non-recurring fund that was made available to us for $400,000, which was directly applied to the technology line. And the $165,000 came in under the municipal portion of the Corona Relief Grant. And that was based on the Board of Ed expenditures, and that was also applied to our plant expenses. If you notice here on the right, I'm including a new column here, and it's showing you the variance over the prior month. I thought this would be a helpful way of just better explaining what's happening through the months. And you can see last month our balance was the negative $399,000, which is now positive. And like I said, it was attributed to those 2 factors. Going on to the next slide, just to run through some of the sub accounts, we still notice a very large deficit in our certified salary account. And this is due once again to the budgeted turnover number. And, we've been chasing this number all year, and I do feel that this will remain negative throughout the year. We had a few changes in our certified subs account and the staff and program development. We did have some interns come back to us this year. So you'll see that balance changed by about $42,000. And we also started some conversations with the principals and the department head. So you'll notice that in staff and program development, there was a $94,000 change. And that was due primarily to a reallocation of expenses. As we continue our discussions with principals, we'll probably make some more adjustments as we go through the year. Down here in the non-certified salaries, you'll still notice a large balance in the educational assistants. We have hired a few more paraprofessionals, but that balance will probably not necessarily be 200,000, but will continue through the balance of the year. I also earmarked $28,000 for our diversity compliance coordinator. That is a prorated amount, expecting to hire them sometime in March. And again, that will be adjusted if we need to. You notice down here in the custodial overtime, we made some adjustments to that account to more accurately reflect the current schedule. And that was for all the COVID deep cleaning, the overtime that they were putting in for that. And all the other changes in the non-certified were primarily adjustments that we made, and they came out of the non-certified salary adjustment line. And we typically do those in November and December, and we offset those accounts in that area, areas that are appropriate. Next, moving on to employee benefits. I did make an adjustment for the unemployment costs, as we see that those costs are beginning to level off a bit as we move through the year. Under professional services, we see that we still have a $77,000 balance here. Again, we'll be continuing our conversations with principals. We have the professional educational services, which is mostly the training. So we'll reassess that account as the time goes on. In purchase, oops, what happened? Sorry about that. In purchase property services, you'll notice a change in the building and grounds contracted services, and we really went through and reassessed all the accounts in this area. And I think this more accurately reflects the balance of the year. Also, as Mr. Delia stated, we had some heavy emergency repairs this year, this month in the high school. You'll see a change of $22,000 in that account, and I'll go over those emergency repairs at the end of the report. In contracted services and other purchase services, we still see a large deficit here, and this primarily is due to the lunch program. Like Mr. Delia was saying, Whitson's has done some strategies, and they are really looking at cost mitigation. They will be servicing the community, the senior center and central office coming up in the next month or so. So I have adjusted that balance to reflect possibly some more revenue. And now with the students back in school, we're hoping that the participation will pick up. Also, you'll see some large balances in transportation and tuition out of district. The transportation we pretty much know about. This has been continuing for the year. We had the $145,000 in the out of district carryover. We had some savings in the local contract as well. But these two accounts are they're subject to change, and I kind of consider those my wild card accounts. And they are heavy swings can occur in those accounts at any time if a student is outplaced or more transportation for out of district is required. So we'll be watching those accounts. Right now they show positive, but I just want to put that out there that they could change. In our supply account, like Mr. Delia had mentioned, we did apply the $165,000 offset directly to the plant supplies, lowering that deficit to $139,000. And below that, we have our energy savings and the virtual net metering. And this is a great program. I just have to, say something about this again. And Mr. Hurley, who set this up on the town side, this has been in works for the last couple of years. So finally it's coming to fruition, and we're noticing some really good savings in this area. And it's perfect time this year for this to start. So the 5 other schools did come online. Probably I'm projecting a little bit conservative here, an additional $87,000, but you know, I'll keep you informed as the data comes in on those accounts. So under equipment, you can see that we are now at a deficit of $242,000, whereas the prior month we were at a deficit of $692,000. So that 400 was directly applied to the technology equipment. And then you see the total on the bottom, the positive balance of $136,982. And that is our current position. And I'm not sure why my screen, there we go. Got stuck for a moment. So that's on the financial report. Here you see the revenues that were received. I added a column to include the grants that we've received and the municipal portion of the Corona Relief Grant, as well as a capital non-recurring account on the town side that we applied to our expenses. In revenue, we think we received, was it $1,000 in tuition? And that was it for revenue. Emergency repair services. Let's just run through this real quick. We did have a repair in the band room at the high school. The AC unit failed, and this unit provides climate control and humidity control over the band room. 3 bids were received. Global Mechanical did the work, and it was $17,000. The auditorium had a roof drain repair, and apparently this has been going on for some time. This was causing some sheetrock damage, and due to the location, they required scaffolding, so it was a little bit more expensive. B&G Mechanical did the work in this project. It was $31,845, and an emergency bid waiver was signed for this work. The other repair at the high school was for the generator. The water pump was replaced, and it was due to a coolant leak. Northeast Generator did the work on this project. It was $6,794, and an emergency bid waiver was signed for that work. Okay, try to be as quick as possible. That's all I have for the financial report this month. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Do we have any board member questions? It was so thorough that nobody has any questions. Okay. Sensing no questions, thank you both for that, that rundown on the financial report. That helps a lot. And we can vote on that now. So all members, board members in favor of the finance report as presented, signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that's unanimous. The financial report is approved. Thank you for that. Great. And that brings us to tonight's big event. We have the overview of the 2021-22 budget, and Dr. Rodrigue will be presenting with some follow-up from our schools on presentation. So Dr. Rodrigue, would you like to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Koo. So good evening. I wanted to begin setting the stage for our 2021-22 budget presentation this evening, and to tell you that this was definitely a complex budget with respect to the challenges that we have all faced since last March, and future needs in supporting our students and staff, but also at looking at the economic issues that we know we will face, not only now, but in the future. And these were certainly all considerations as we developed our budget. So that being said, our principals and directors work very closely with me, as they do every year, to develop the budget through the lens of sustained core programming and enhanced student support systems. And all these are all key goals as we look ahead. And as I do every year, I also want to recognize our central office team, all of our directors who worked with their staff in developing this operational plan that I feel makes sense and is fiscally responsible and continues to include the academic supports that are necessary for all of our students. So, but I also hope through this entire process, and I think I remarked on this last year, that we're reminded that the most critical aspect of our role, I know as educators, is to meet the needs of our students and our staff, and we should reflect on those faces behind the numbers. This budget comes at a time when our town, our state, our nation, and the world has been dealing with a global pandemic that has, for good reason, pulled our attentions away at times, raised everyone's anxieties, and moved us in a direction we thought we would never be in. It has certainly impacted our economy, that's true, and most definitely it has impacted education in ways that might not be as readily evident even now at this point in time. We've relied certainly a great deal on technology, digital applications, and engaging our students in virtual environments, something that was entirely new. Our goals and priorities, however, are still focused on teaching and learning, and we've recognized that we will need to incorporate social emotional learning and academic supports as we identify those learning areas, those learning gaps, and ensure that our students are making progress and in the end finding success. We also remained mindful as we were putting together our budget of our Board of Ed priorities, including class size, the changing needs in technology, ongoing maintenance of building and grounds. You heard a little bit about those kinds of things that come up unexpectedly through Tanya's report. Special education and mental health resources, as well as professional development, the inclusion of academic pathways and supports to meet our students' needs. These were all, I will tell you, at the forefront as we began discussions and deliberation around our next year's budget. One thing that has not changed, I must say, is our effort to sustain our educational system through a responsible design. And I used that term last year as well. These are those deliberate decisions responsible for maintaining and sustaining programs and what I know are the quality services we offer every day in the classroom, including being mindful of our class sizes and the need for support personnel, the identification of those learning needs in math and literacy, and of course, professional development for staff, as well as adequate staffing. The realities we have as educators are connected to increasing gaps due to COVID, the social emotional needs, special education costs, instructional improvements, and expansion of programs such as world language, and of course, all of the other state requirements that go along with this. We balanced all of these needs as we looked across the fiscal landscape as well. Overall, I just wanted to say we had three main intentions as we developed this budget: sustaining core programming, as I mentioned, and services to address academic and social emotional needs, ensuring that we have an equitable quality service in place for a diverse spectrum of learners through identified academic pathways, scheduling, and supports. And then finally, highlighting the need for staff to support students with learning gaps as we following up on this worldwide pandemic. And these intentions are certainly in alignment with our mission of high expectations and quality instruction, ongoing improvements, and supporting our students in becoming civic-minded within a global community. And as you see, I put the strategic plan slide up every year. We are looking next year to start to revise that, but right now, these are the core essential elements that we want all students to have as they move forward. And our operational plan continues to reflect the strategic plan and how the budget supports the preparation of our students for college and career, reading, communication, problem solving, and critical thinking skills. In our strategic plan, we want to continue to offer those multiple pathways and opportunities for our students that includes STEM, our science, technology, engineering, and math programs, build upon, as I mentioned, our world language program for students in grade K-8. So it provides a very important bridge to high school and to help our students demonstrate the character attributes that we all know contribute to a positive culture. And that positive culture must be equitable across grade levels and schools. And I think it grows certainly out of our instructional practices, ongoing leadership, the relationships that we all build with students and families, the policies and practices we have in place, as well as the development of academic programming that's both relevant and rigorous. And you will see how this is shaped in the requests this evening in this budget. From a new math program, K-5, the inclusion of world language as part of the core academic team at the middle school level, the ongoing support of one-to-one technology, our PEAK, our Parent Educator Advisory Council, and professional development opportunities for all of our staff. In our efforts to ensure our ongoing SEL, social emotional programs, especially in light of the challenges we've all faced, we have a very clear path in the supports we continue to offer to help our students develop their social emotional skills, foster positive behaviors, manage conflicts and stress, and feel a sense of confidence at school. And all of this is closely aligned with our intent to ensure a positive and equitable learning environment at each of our schools and for all of our students K-12. You will find this in the funding for staff who participate in PEAK. Many of our subgroups from that committee are shaping programs that tap directly into the social emotional needs of all students. We have continued to add behavioral interventionists at each of our elementary schools and funded professional development in these areas as well. SEL continues to include our second step programming, Project Adventure, our SERBI process, but also professional development for staff that addresses diversity, bullying, and conflict resolution. And again, this will become increasingly important as we return to school in full next fall. Each of these operational plan goals directly key off of our own leadership priorities outlined throughout the year and highlighted in this budget book. While these have not changed, our budget goals include the obvious impact that COVID has had on the academic and social emotional learning and growth for our students. And these goals included implementing academic instructional strategies, a culture of rigorous learning, technology and digital resources, policies, protocols, and practices are implemented to address diversity and equity, and again, professional development for all of our staff. Each of these goals is equally critical to our work in the year ahead, and I wanted to highlight just some of the more significant areas in next year's budget that align with those same goals. The first are the instructional strategies and social emotional supports that address COVID-related impacts on learning. So we have a math interventionist, Newtown Middle School, behavioral interventionist, and this is coming off of a grant at Hedda Meadow. New SPED teachers, special education teachers, one at Middlegate and two at Newtown Middle School. A math support at Sandy Hook, which is a 0.5, at Hawley a 0.5 as well. A reading teacher at Middlegate at 0.5, and an increase in our elementary para hours. Now the para hours, just as a note, were increased in this year's budget and moved forward into next year's budget as well. We also want to continue to promote, as I mentioned, a culture of rigor, student engagement, and making those appropriate transitions between grade levels. So the Newtown, the new Newtown Middle School schedule is being changed for next year, and I know they presented to the CNI as well as the full board. The integration of world language as part of the Newtown Middle School cluster academic program, and that will be 3.2 FTE there. A Spanish teacher at Reed at 0.33 FTE, and unified arts courses not yet named or defined, 2 of those at Newtown Middle School. And again, this is part of that ongoing revision of the schedule, and I know that they want to include student voices in the development of those courses as well. New textbooks and math program with digital resources. This is the K-5 math text and programs, Spanish, Western Civilization, Amplify Science program and texts. All of these are going to continue to improve our instruction and deepen conceptual understanding for all of our students. And you will find this in next year's budget. Another goal is to embrace technology and the digital resources that will facilitate students' application of concepts and deepen their understandings. Technology, as you know, went soaring to the forefront during our efforts to implement remote and hybrid learning models. However, that being said, our district was already moving in that direction toward a one-to-one device, even prior to last March. There were also a variety of digital applications that have now become a part of our teachers' instructional repertoire and that have become integral to our work with students in enhancing their understanding of concepts and providing them support. So we have one-to-one technology. You'll see Chromebooks for ninth graders for next year. Our ongoing use of digital resources and technology, things like Rubicon Atlas, the assessment on NWEA, Lexia, Nucella, Screencastify, Seesaw, many of these that were used since last March as well. Edpuzzle and online speech for special education, an update on our Newtown High School computer lab, our language lab, and the graphics lab as well being updated at Newtown High School. As you know, another goal we have had in the district is in the effort to ensure policies, protocols, and our practices are implemented to address diversity and equity and the creation of a positive climate across the district. We have our diversity coordinator. We have professional hours for our staff members who participate in KEEP and staff training, ongoing training on diversity and bullying in next year's budget. Finally, the budget addresses ongoing funding for professional development, specifically in the areas of teaching and learning. We've identified curriculum hours, as we always do, for staff to continue to make those critical revisions for courses and programs K-12, as well as supporting new staff through the team, the teacher education and mentoring program, training for the implementation of our new math program K-5, professional development for Reed and Newtown Middle School teachers on differentiation, and that has a special emphasis on supporting teachers in the new co-taught model. ELL training for our new coordinator and other key staff, the continuation of support for the implementation of NGSS, our next generation science standards, and this is for our high school teachers. And each year we review the revenue that makes up our budget, as these funding sources are integral to our operational plan, as you would well expect. Approximately 94% of the budget comes from tax revenue, with just a little over 5% coming from education cost sharing, with the remainder of other revenues coming from grants, local tuition, parking, and small miscellaneous fees. As you know, the state operates on a 2-year budget cycle, and I know I referred to this last year in my budget presentation. The state proposes a budget that includes information on education cost sharing for all of the Connecticut districts. But this number, again, is only anticipated, as the state doesn't finalize this until sometime in February. We expect to receive next year $4.5 million. Now, with respect to the excess cost grant, which is funding focused on special education, this is determined based on the number of eligible special ed students enrolled, and that calculation is based on the number of students with specialized needs exceed 4.5 times our net per pupil expenditure. And you will see that in an upcoming slide. Our net per pupil expenditure is approximately $18,787. Thus, the excess cost grant next year is anticipated to be $1,660,820. This slide actually shows you a hypothetical cost related to those excess cost calculations. And this same chart can be found on page, I think it's 133 of your budget books. Based on the net per pupil expenditure from the previous year, the threshold for Newtown students eligibility would be approximately $84,537. So again, this is a hypothetical student cost, includes tuition and transportation. That's $100,000 in tuition and $40,000 in transportation costs, equaling $140,000 for that one potential or hypothetical student cost. With the threshold being, again, $84,537, we would then deduct this from the student cost of $140,000 to receive a final eligible cost of $55,463. This figure is then multiplied by 75% reimbursement from the state, and as you see, deducted from the original cost of $140,000. So Newtown would be responsible for the remaining cost for this particular student for $98,403. Again, just to give you some insight as to how this all works. This slide depicts the high cost of our special education out-of-district tuition with the excess cost grant revenue offset, which leaves us responsible for the net balance next year of $3,196,628. And this can actually go up at any point during the year. And I want to bring that up just as a cautionary tale. Again, this is simply an estimate with an approximate averages have been between 40 and 46 students who have been outplaced over the last few years. So let's just stay with special education for a moment. This chart depicts the out-of-district tuition costs as compared to our SPED program. As you can see, the majority of our expenses, just a little over 74%, are all in-house, with approximately 26% for out-of-district costs. I wanted you to know what the initial budget requests were when we started, and we scaled back after multiple discussions and deliberation with our principals and our directors in central office. We felt these reductions would not adversely impact the district. As you will note, what we have done in next year's budget not only sustains what we believe are the quality services that have existed, but also make improvements that will, we feel, have long-term effects on students and staff, and of course, teaching and learning. We initially started at $82,479,159. That would have been a 4.87% increase. We made reductions of $1,398,462, or 1.78% decrease over the initial requests. So the proposal moving forward in the superintendent's budget for next year is $81,080,697, or just over a 3% increase over the current year's budget. The details of all of this can be viewed on page 192 in your budget books as well. This slide shows the various objects and the requested budget requests in this area for next year. This results in an overall increase to the budget of $2,428,921. The next slide shows the object summary and percent of increase by major objects. Again, salary, employee benefits, purchased professional, other purchased supplies, property equipment, and other objects. The increases are clearly purchased property, which had been a part of last year's reduction by the Legislative Council, just as a reminder, of $335,000. The remainder was a reduction in technology that year of $115,000. This was restored through the use of town capital non-recurring funds, so the bump was definitely expected this year in our budget. In other purchase services, the increase comes from contractual obligations for transportation at 3% and contracted services Supplies are down since energy is a part of this object. And again, as you heard earlier, virtual net metering has provided substantial savings in this area, almost $200,000. Other objects include typical staff memberships. This slide just extends the previous slide to illustrate the percentage of increases or decreases by major object. Again, we've already discussed this, but this highlights the percentage of budget increases. The two red highlighted areas show purchased, professional, and supplies objects as having decreased for next year. And I want to get into some further detail in the major areas so you can get a better understanding of the drivers, both increases and decreases. Salaries and employee benefits comprise approximately $2 million, or just over 82% of our requested budget increase. The majority of salary increase is contractual obligations. As we've discussed, other salary increases, a net additional 3.73 certified staff at 192,059. Additional FTE, non-certified staff, that is the diversity compliance coordinator at 70,000. And all of the positions that are coming off grants, just over 200,000. Employee benefits are anticipated to increase just over 2%, or $242,670. This slide shows that the majority of our benefits include medical and dental at 73%. With the others, it's made up of pension and life insurance, and of course, workers' compensation. But again, just showing you the majority is made up of medical and dental. This slide gives you the drivers behind the salaries, including contractual obligations. So next year, teachers will receive 1.0 wage increase plus the step movement. Approximately 526,000, or 1.6% of the teacher salary increase will be due to step movements. Administrators will receive a 2% wage increase for the upcoming year, and nurses are to be determined based on negotiations which are up and coming. Paraeducators will receive an average of 2.59% plus step movement, and secretaries and custodians will receive a 2.25 wage increase. So the total change in salary adjustments is $1,755,965, or 3.44%. Our current year budget for building projects was reduced to zero. Again, $335,000 by the town prior to budget approval last April. This amount was transferred to the town's capital non-recurring for use by the Board of Ed towards the original budgeted projects. Purchase property services is expected to increase by $333,215, or 17.68%. The driver behind the increase can be found in building and site maintenance projects in the amount of $345,000. All other objects under purchase property services equates to a reduction of minus $11,785 from the current year. In other purchase services and equipment drivers, the majority can be found in contracted services. Other purchase services is expected to increase at about 2.25%. The drivers behind the increase in this area can be found in contracted services and in transportation increases. The contracted services can be found in curriculum, where we are investing in 2 digital contracted services, both Lexia and Nucella. Other increases include our ice rental for the athletics department and increases in technology contracts. In transportation, we have a 3% increase with All-Star and a 1.96 contractual increase with our out-of-district transportation provider. Our equipment is expected to increase about 5.85%, or just over $32,000. The driver here is technology equipment as we continue our plan for our one-to-one devices and students' access to online programs and tools. 2021-22 will be the final year of a 5-year contract with All Star, just so you know. And again, their increase for next year is just around 3%. I also want to point out some of the smart decisions that we've made over the years in many areas. This has saved us money in energy and professional services and support of teaching and learning. In benefits, due to the restructuring of our plan, we've been able to self-sustain a reasonable balance in our medical fund. And again, this mitigates the rising costs and unpredictable fluctuations inherent in traditional insurance plans. In energy, although energy costs are always on the rise, through diligence and collaboration, we've maintained a level of certainty and stability for our district with competitive third-party pricing for electricity. And again, the virtual net metering now running at 6 of our 7 schools. And again, this is a great savings for us. Facilities consistently undergo evaluation and ultimately replacement of lighting and boilers and switches and other mechanicals that help us control and reduce the cost of our energy. In professional services, thanks to our special ed department and parents that collaboration has resulted in students having appropriate access to services by utilizing our own staff and our own programs and services. And finally, our Director of Teaching and Learning has provided full district leadership and guidance prior to and throughout the pandemic, including working directly with teacher groups related to instruction and instructional practices and supports for both hybrid and remote learning models, supervising ESL, and working with our members' subcommittee in diversity and equity in KEEK. And now we come to student enrollment, which is something that we are mindful of every year, especially because we had declining enrollment and only now are just starting to see a slight upward trend at the elementary level. We are currently holding at a plus 12 additional students in district with increases of 89 students across the elementary level and 14 at Reed. Our enrollment is projected to be 4,011 students next year. As expected, the decreases are still evident at the middle and high school levels. Now, what is worth noting is that due to the pandemic, we had families who held their kindergartners back and others who decided to disenroll students for a year. Actually, the total is just about 67 families who disenrolled students this year directly due to the pandemic. And this certainly impacted our actual numbers from October. I used these charts last year, but I think it's important to review visually the trends in our enrollment along with changes in staffing, because you often hear that. You know, how many staff are you losing? How many are you adding? And are you mindful of enrollment along the way? You can see a common trend as we go down in enrollment. Here in K4, the shift has followed that trend. In 2015-16, we had 1,323 students. And as this trend continued into the next year, we were 4 less teachers as a result. And as our enrollment began to increase, our classroom teachers slowly increased as well. At the 5-6 level, the blue line represents enrollment at Reed. Interestingly, even when enrollment was increasing, staffing remained flat, as you can see. In 14-15, you begin to see reductions, and this continues until 2019-20 in alignment with a decrease to 560 students from over 850 students back in 2009-10. As the increase began in 1920, so did a small trend in increasing staff. We now have 28 classroom teachers at Reed as opposed to 36 back in the years 9-10. I wanted to point out that this is not a one-to-one relationship. I know I have pointed this out before. As enrollment decreases, we continue to review the impact that all of this has on class size and student needs. And this helps in making a decision about whether the decrease in students warrants a reduction in force. This is important because many other factors come into play when we look at the relationship between enrollment and staffing. For example, at Reed, we included for next year 2 additional 6th grade teachers, which keep our average class sizes at around 22. If we had taken from 5th grade and repurposed staffing there, this would have brought numbers up in 5th grade to 24 students per class with very little wiggle room. If we don't add to the 6th grade next year, we would be at 26 students per average class, and that would be above our guidelines. History has also told us at Reed that summer enrollment can increase just this summer alone. And I know Dr. Correa will touch upon this. There were 39 new students. Moving on to the middle school, there's an expectation of 46 fewer students next year. However, in this case, we also have a new schedule that we're implementing with the addition of world language as a 5th academic core class as part of the cluster model. This prompted staffing reductions in some areas, but additions as well. We also did not need to continue with the 6-person team as we did this year, which made this new schedule highly desirable while still in alignment with the enrollment trends. While the high school has followed a similar trend, again, we have continued to make adjustments to correlate with those changes in enrollment and those fluctuations. Enrollment in class size at the high school, as you all know, is quite complex. Like the middle school, we look at things like teacher certification and scheduling and programming, which is very important for students. You will see adjustments at the high school as well for next year when we get to the staffing. So we have additional staffing requests that were included in next year's budget. Some of these related to class size, as I mentioned, and ensuring that we are in alignment with our own class size guidelines. A kindergarten teacher at Hawley, math interventions at Hawley, first grade teacher at Sandy Hook, math intervention at Sandy Hook, and both a Middlegate reading and special education teacher there to meet the needs of students. We also have added 2 6th grade teachers, as I mentioned, at Reed, and a 0.33 FTE Spanish to continue our expansion of the program there. The middle school, again, because of the change in their schedule, prompted the addition of 3.2 FTE world language teachers to the cluster arrangement, making world language, as I mentioned, a core academic, and adding a 5th person to each team. This eliminated, as I said, the need for the 6-person team. We have 2 additional teachers for unified arts classes not yet determined, as I know the leadership wanted to invite, as I mentioned, student voices in the development of those classes. We want those classes to be rigorous, but we also want them to be engaging for students as part of the new middle school schedule. The middle school has also requested 2 special education teachers to address the growing needs at the middle school. As a result of the middle school schedule change, staffing adjustments were also made here. However, again, this was done with the intention of improving the overall middle school programming and enhancing the opportunities for middle school students. We had cuts, also had cuts at the high school, a reduction of 1.0 FTE social studies teacher, a 0.8 science teacher, and a 0.5 tech ed teacher. At the middle school, 1.5 English teacher was a reduction, a 1.5 math teacher as a reduction, a 1.5 science teacher, and 1.5 social studies, and 1.0 FTE family and consumer science teacher, as well as a reading teacher and a guidance counselor. Okay, moving on, you've already approved the diversity compliance coordinator, which we are looking to hire this year. This is under non-certified requests. This is positive, I think, for the entire district. And this position will work closely with students, staff, leaders, and families in a variety of supportive ways. But he or she will be responsible mostly for ensuring that we continue to adhere to our policies, have consistent practices in place, ongoing training for staff and accountability when issues arise, and working certainly closely with leadership in that area. This position will serve a wide spectrum of students and families and help us in the annual reporting and resolution of incidents that we will report to the board annually. And again, that's part of our policy. There are also, and I believe I alluded to this earlier, there are additional increases to staff, but these staff and these positions already exist and are needed, but are funded or have been funded through grants. You will note that the Sandy Hook Foundation will continue to fund a position or even parts of a position while we are still awaiting confirmation of future funding by both VOCA and NOVO grants. These are expected, but we just do not know the actual grant offsets at this time. And this would certainly have an impact on the $200,000 for these current positions. So the paraeducator at Hedda Meadow at 0.93, the 1.0 social worker, there are 3 social workers and one of our SSOs as well. Again, we don't have the final numbers on what these offsets would be from VOCA and NOVO, but moving forward, this could be a reduction here in part. So while last year was 0.7, less than 1%, this was due to the town's budget adjustment, as we've talked about, which lowered our final percent increase for that year's budget. Our increase this year is largely due, as I pointed out, contractual obligations and the replacement of funds from those areas cut last year. But it also includes the needed staffing as we look to support our students related to the academic loss following a pandemic. It also includes, as you have seen, priorities with middle school scheduling and the opportunities for students in language and unified arts possibilities that we know are going to be both engaging and rigorous for those middle school students. And this year, looking at supports, both academic and social emotional, as well as the integral changes to school schedules and programming, and the inclusion of new positions to support an equitable culture, our increase is 3.09%. That includes regular education, just at $978,544. Special education and pupil personnel, $707,899. And general services, benefits, transportation, and plant at $742,478. And again, these are the increases that make up the 3.09%. This slide here, I think we put this up last year, illustrates our net current expenditure per pupil. This information, just so you know, is always just about a year behind. But it does show us that we are just above the middle of DERG B towns and districts. As of 1920, just so you know, we ranked 78, and that is in your budget book, Tanya. I'm not sure what page that's on. We can refer them to that later. But over 160 districts, we are ranked at about 78. So that puts us, again, just about in the middle of all of the districts in Connecticut when it comes to our net per pupil expenditures. And finally, just a last comment. While this has been, as you can well imagine, one of the most challenging years I think any one of us has ever dreamed we would be participating in, we know with the right staffing, supports, academic pathways and opportunities, school schedules, everything that supports our students on a daily basis, that they will make leaps and bounds very quickly and recover academically and emotionally and socially. That's our goal. That's our wish for all of our students in Newtown. And I know that you will hear now from the principals at elementary and Reed and the middle school. And I know that they will include additional details and dig even deeper as I've outlined here this evening for you. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Rodrigue. That's a lot of information to take in. All right, so do we have any board member questions now on anything that you saw in the presentation that you'd like to comment on? All right, I'm sensing none. Thank you. That was a lot of really good information to take in. But I think we should probably move on to our elementary school budgets, and we can usually we'd call everybody up to the front table. It's hard to isolate you in this screen of I don't know, pick a person. So I see we have our 4 principals here. I don't know if you have a statement or something you'd like to state up front before we dive in. Yes, Mr. Geisler.
Hi,
Hi.
Dr. Koo. Good evening, Dr. Koo and members of the board. This is certainly different. Used to shuffling chairs and adjusting mics right now. But it's a little more comfortable right now. I'm not sweating. We just wanted to start out. I believe Dr. Rodrigue mentioned we're going to do a little bit of a different opening this year, although we usually start out with points of pride. It's still going to be a point of pride, but it's going to be a spotlight on something that is happening in the elementary schools or multiple elementary schools.
Chris, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I must have hit that twice. I don't know if you heard the beginning, but thank you for allowing us to come on. And obviously it's a very different year. I don't know if Dr. Reed had mentioned that elementary is going to do a little bit differently this year. We usually come up and talk about points of pride. And we're still going to do that, but in a different way. In connecting to some of the work on the Peak Committee, particularly the budget subcommittee, we're each going to spotlight something that is happening in our schools or in multiple schools, and how that is a direct connection to the budget and budget support that we've either had looking for this year or had in years past. So I'd like to start off and just talk for about a minute or so about the PAL program that we have at Middlegate School. The PAL program, as you know, is designed to meet the needs of individual students who display significant delays in academic, social, cognitive, adaptive, and communication functioning. The program is supported by a special education teacher, a behavior analyst, and adult support. The program includes regular consult with related service providers, specialists, and classroom teachers to promote generalization in the inclusive setting. The pilot for our program was in 2016-17. Since that first year, we've had students who are Middlegate students and also others districted to other elementary schools in town. And we've also added 2 students from out of district who were placed here to participate in our program. Over the years, we've had numerous students serviced. Currently, we have 6 students in the program, each with a BT, so there's a 1-to-1 ratio for students at this time. Peer mentoring began the following year, the first year, with students in the child's classroom coming down and working with the students in the PAL room during approved time, like read aloud or content studies. The students would work with the PAL students on their social, emotional, or behavioral IEP objectives in ways such as playing a game, doing a craft, and modeling appropriate behaviors. The PAL program students would work on their social skills in these small structured groups led by the staff in order to give them pre-teaching opportunities to help them more easily use these skills when in the large classroom environment or in other settings. The following year and the first full year of our program, we decided to venture out into a mentoring program that included PAL specials. We began that program with art in which the teacher would do a modified lesson with our students so they could practice their skills in the smaller group format with the specialist before joining in the regular art class with their peers. The following year, we added PAL Music in the start of the year, and PAL PE later that year came on board. Each of those was also able to provide peer mentorship opportunities and promote inclusion. The budget connection is in twofold. One is in being able to maintain students in the district. At the time, we had students that we could not meet based on our programming, and there was kind of no middle area. It was either we could provide it in the classroom or there's an out-of-district placement, and also bring on board 2 students from out of the district into our district that we could support their needs and join our program as others got wind of how successful that we've been. So I'm going to turn it over to some of my colleagues. I believe Mr. Napolitano and Mr. Moretti will go up next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Geisler. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to our budgets, answer questions you have, but also talk a little bit about how you have helped us and supported us through the budget and with all our work in the past, and how it leads to the bridge to the future. You probably heard through Dr. Rodriguez's presentation how important social emotional learning is to the district. SEL is not just a priority in all our schools, it's a district priority, and certainly this year, the social emotional well-being of our students could not be more in the forefront. That's a very large umbrella. It covers a wide, vast array of programming and resources, and so we're going to kind of all take a little piece of that and show how that is happening in our school. It started a while ago when you supported us in moving our school counselors to the Board of Ed budget. That was the critical first step because they were the cornerstone in developing our SEL staff resourcing and programming. And then we built upon that with programs and resources, and we widened our SRBI system, which was very strong in math and reading, but now encompasses behavior and social emotional learning. And so Mr. Napolitano and I are going to discuss the latest supports to that system, which is the behavior interventionist. And then Dr. Gambas at the end is going to kind of tie it all together with a lot of the SEL programs and professional development that has been supported through the budget over the years. The behavior interventionist position began at Middlegate and kind of sprung off to Hawley almost the same year. It was the 18-19 year. It started off as a pilot program. The need that it serviced was students that were having emotional or behavioral problems in the classroom, but not necessarily to the point where they were special ed students. Some were, many were not. But they were either disruptive in the class or certainly required more supports than the classroom teacher was able to provide at that time. And we needed to really make a shift. And this position really began that shift of us handling these situations in a proactive way versus a reactive way. And this became one person who answered the call instead of a rotating cavalcade of available staff that happened to be available in a moment when a student needed support. That one person is able to respond, and that one person is able to build a relationship with that student. And that really is the key to the success of helping the student. And this was another key piece in building SRBI in the behavioral prong of helping classroom teachers and helping our counselors help these students and develop plans and whatnot. And that's kind of an overview of the position. It's been extremely beneficial and extremely successful. And I believe Mr. Napolitano now is going to go into more details and specificity of the role.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Sometimes this headset doesn't work. Thank you. So thank you all to Dr. Koo, our Board of Education, for having us tonight. I can speak for all of our elementary principals. Like, what an amazing job our staff is doing this year in these uncertain times. All of our staff members, our families, and our students, we're just so proud of all of them right now, because it's amazing to see what they're able to accomplish this year. So I'm going to follow up with what Mr. Moretti was talking about with our behavior interventionist, and it's new this year to Head Meadow, and it's really been a wonderful addition to our staff. Our behavioral interventionist has really spent a great deal of time getting to know all of our students. They're getting to know our staff. They're really working closely with our school counselor, our special education staff, to really support in any way possible, and to meet the needs of all of our students. And they're really being, like as Chris said, proactive, working to help alleviate behavioral issues in the classroom, being able to give students breaks ahead of any issues popping up. They take walks, sensory breaks. Our data collection has been a huge part of what our behavioral interventionist is doing to understand the needs of each individual student, and to try to identify what may be ways to help proactively help support them. And she's even helped out at the community center when the students were remote, to be able to go over there and to and help with the students that needed help over there. And on her own, she even put in a sensory path in our kindergarten hallway to be able to take students to work there. So we've been really pleased with this position, and thankful that you supported that. So thank you all very much.
And does that
Dr. Gombas is
leave
next.
us with Dr. Gombas?
Hi, guys. How
Hi.
is everybody? So interesting to see where everybody's standing in their house and their pillows, and it's interesting. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity. We always appreciate it. Unfortunately, we don't get in front of you guys enough. And to piggyback on Mr. Napolitano, I want to extend a really quick shout out of gratitude to our teaching staff, our entire staff, but our teachers have been asked to do the unbelievable, and they've risen to the occasion, and their commitment to kids and to delivering instruction has not wavered. And I have never in my career been so impressed with human beings. They are just really unbelievable. And also the positivity and the cooperation of our parents has been just amazing. So I just wanted to make sure I said that, because when we talk about social emotional learning, we have had to do a lot of it this year, more than ever, because as we know, the pandemic has added stress to kids like it has to adults. Like Hedda Meadow and Hawley and Middlegate, I now have a behavior interventionist. I was fortunate, like some of the other schools, to have been able to hire someone who's part of my staff. She's excellent with behavior, and the position has proven to be so impactful in the sense that it has allowed us to give targeted plans that are proactive to kids that we had to wait for a reaction before. It is one part of our SEL program. The other parts of our SEL program that we've really focused on this year and in the past couple of years, because of support of the district and the board, has been our instructional pieces. Last year, Ann Uberti brought in Second Step to meet with administrators to invigorate us to get our staff and every grade level using the new online resources, and also to make sure that we were implementing the curriculum with fidelity. So we've worked really hard at doing that. We did that prior to the pandemic, and it was a great thing to do because we have now used Second Step this year. We've used it for several years, but this year we used our online resources, and we've really worked on making sure lessons are done with fidelity. The other thing that we've created in our schools, thanks to Middlegate's innovative staff, we've all put in mindful rooms now. And we know that mindfulness is some people call it's not supposed to be an event, but it's supposed to be the culmination of skills that kids have and adults have to regulate themselves, and also to focus themselves. So we have each put in a mindful room. They're only being used on an individual basis right now for kids. with our behavior interventionists. Hopefully next year we will be able to follow a little bit of the middle gate model where classes and groups of kids access the resource. The other area that has been around for a really long time, but we know in education, like everything else, we need to revisit things. I apologize. I have a bulldog snoring in the background. I'm embarrassed, but if I wake her up, it'll be trouble. So is responsive classroom. Responsive classroom PD has been supported over the last 2 years, and every elementary teacher has now been trained in responsive classroom. And I know that you guys know, but that is, the philosophy that if we take academic skills and combine them with social emotional skills, kids will do their best in school. It's about intrinsically wanting to do well and feeling part of a community and feeling accountable to a community. So that has been, that was a huge PD expenditure in the last year and the year before. And again, that has really paid off. We've looked at our instruction through Second Step, our teaching through responsive classroom, and we've combined it with our developmental guidance curriculums, which Brett and the guidance counselors have been working on for years. And we really are very excited about the comprehensive SEL program that we've developed. We use the CASTLE competencies as our basis, but we do work really hard at aligning everything, including morning meetings, to match whatever objective we are working on in SEL. I think that this year it's been more important than ever, and the addition of the equity and diversity training has been perfect with our comprehensive SEL program. We all know that equity and diversity is such an important issue for us to look at in our classrooms. And I've spoke to it before that we do a good job at it at the elementary school, but we do need to really do some looking at how we deliver it and what messages we're giving and what is the most impactful way to make sure that kids that we teach kids about equity and diversity, and more importantly, that we make everybody feel welcome and respected all the time. So that has been a really excellent addition this year, which I know was not an inexpensive PD, and we do appreciate it. Under the guidance of the Ann Uberti and the Safe School Climate, we are all putting together SEL plans so that next year's teachers have, and parents, and you guys have in one place all the programs and services and how they align monthly or every 6 weeks with the objectives we're teaching. So this way we're hoping we can make sure that we're not missing anything and that we do have a comprehensive approach to, because we learned many, many years ago that some of us have empathy and others need to be taught how to have empathy. And once we teach them, we can teach people social emotional skills. So thank you for your support. And now we are willing to take any board questions about our budgets or about any of the programs, SEL or otherwise, in our schools.
Okay, thank you. Thank you also for being here. It didn't dawn on me that this really is the first time that we've seen you. I think Mr. Moretti might have been with us a little while back, or maybe that was CNI. I can't remember. But it's been a while, and it's good to see you here, and thank you for being here this evening and speaking to all that's going on in your schools. So I'll open it up to board member questions. Are there any board members with questions? Ms. Zukowski?
Yeah, I have 3 or so. So I'll just ask one and then I'll wait for it to see if somebody else. Okay, and this may seem like in the weeds, but your program descriptions on page 40 and 41 call out the mathematics as taught in the classroom, calls out the language arts as taught in the classroom, music and phys ed. But I'm sure, I see you have an art teacher, and I know that there's world language the Spanish program, and it looks like you've actually are accounting for them in your teaching staff now, whereas they were last year in the curriculum section, I think. So the question first is, you do teach the Spanish program, the art program, and science and global studies to some degree, right? But that's not listed as your program description. Is there a reason why they're not there?
It's going to be interesting. You're going to see us deciding who's taking it via digital text, because normally otherwise we'll all yell out. Yes, we do teach I'm not sure why it's not in our program description. That could have been an oversight and it's probably been an oversight for a couple of years, but art is taught as often as not as PE, PE's twice. Art is taught once in a 6-day cycle, just like music is. And library media is as well. Spanish also this year was added as a additional special period. So that is also taught with equal time to all of those special areas.
And what about science and social studies? Are they standalone, programs that should be called out, or are they more catchy?
Sorry to interject.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm wondering if those are not in program description, but that's because that's taught by the general teacher, the classroom teacher. She would teach reading, writing, math, science, social studies, etc. Whereas a different person would come in and teach the art, the Spanish, the PE, and
Right.
specialists, we call them at the elementary level.
Right, but you have mathematics and language arts listed.
Yes, again, as Kathy, Dr. Gamo said, I'm not sure exactly why they're not delineated in the fashion that you're asking. I was just trying to come up with a possible reason why.
There is a content period every day, just like there is a math period and a reading period. And during the content period, science and social studies are switched off. And depending on the unit and the topic, there could be switched off daily, or they could be switched off in cycles of many days. If there's an inquiry science that takes 5 days in a row, then social studies will take precedence at the end of the inquiry science lesson. But social studies is also incorporated into our readers and writers workshop, as when we do non-fictional books, we attempt to align our science and our social studies curriculums with the objectives for content.
Very interesting. Thank you. And
Can
now,
I just add one thing to that, if you don't mind? The program descriptions, they do align with all the program cost centers in the elementary schools. And I think, it's been like that for a number of years. And that's probably why they don't have descriptions, because they don't have cost centers.
Oh, there you go. See?
yeah. Well, maybe next year we can have descriptions, because I think people would like to see that, some of the richness that you're actually doing. I'm not going to ask it for this year, but keep it on tap for next. It just would be nice from my point of view. It also looks like you've inherited the cost for the Spanish teachers, that they were once in the curriculum cost center, and now they're in the elementary school cost center. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, we did make a change this year. That was in the curriculum as a new program, and it was decided that these teachers are in elementary level, so they should be moved, and we moved those teachers this year.
Okay, just so that when we're comparing, we know that there's a bit of a difference there. Now, I have two specific staffing questions, but I don't want to dominate, so I'll step back and see if anybody else wants to ask their questions.
Are there any other board members with questions? I don't think so, so you can continue.
Okay, so is it Sandy Hook or Holly? Let me see. No, it's Sandy Hook.
May I ask a question while Mrs. Zukowski's figuring
Yes.
it out? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Deborah, is that okay?
Absolutely.
I have a question about and I don't know who can answer this. I have a question about the enrollment. I was it looks like a driving factor in hiring new teachers is the increase in enrolled students at the elementary level. and I was wondering how we come up with the numbers for kindergarten. I was looking at our estimate and it said that it was like 76 kids are in pre-K, basically straight on down. And maybe Lori or Dr. Rodriguez, you can answer this, or somebody can tell me how we come up with those estimates of the number of kids that are going to be in kindergarten. Or somebody.
I have actually looked at a lot of the enrollment stuff. I don't know. These numbers match exactly what the Prouda study said. I don't know if that's where they came from, but that's exactly what they match.
I'm sorry, Dr. Koo, are you answering the question? What was it?
So the Prouda study that we contracted a couple of years ago to do the enrollment study, they have a projection for the incoming kindergarten class every year based on birth rates and how that sustains, how the birth rate sustains into the kindergarten numbers.
No, that's accurate. And Tanya, you can add to that as well, because we were talking this evening about it was very complex with enrollment this year, as you can imagine, and why we didn't use the persistence factor or the ratio that we have in the past, especially because of, you know, the issues that we faced this year in enrollment. Tanya, did you want to speak a little bit to how those numbers were put together?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of that. That was from Peter Prouda's projection.
Yes.
And like Dr. Rodriguez said, we didn't use the internal projection because of the big decline. Well, we saw the disenrollment numbers were quite high. So if we factored that into our projections, the internal projections, I think it would have kind of skewed the numbers. So we decided that Peter Prouda would be the better fit for this year because of the pandemic and enrollment situations.
May I continue?
Yes. Go ahead.
But then so from kindergarten to first grade, say at Middlegate, it goes from 76 to 86 kids. Sandy Hook goes from 67 to 86. Are you jumping from actual to projected?
Yep.
Are you jumping from actual students in kindergarten to projected students in first grade? That's my question, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That is what.
That would be a roll forward. We're not using a roll forward technique, if that's what you're referring to, because in Sandy Hook, I see 67 to 64.
No, if you go from the kindergartners in this year will be first graders next year, right? So if you just do that diagonal line, it goes from 67 kids in kindergarten at Sandy Hook this year to 86 kids in first grade next year.
Right.
So are we going from the 67 is the actual number and the 86 is a projection? Is that how this reads?
No, yes. The 67 is an actual number for the current year and the 86 is a projection for next year.
So we're going to say 21 kids are going to move into Sandy Hook between this year and next year based on projections, even though we only have 67 in kindergarten.
Well, again, it is a projection, yeah. And it was a projection that was done.
We also have had kids go to private kindergarten because of the pandemic. I was projected to have 80 kindergartners this year or 76. And so we do have a group of students that we've identified that have gone to private kindergarten. I don't know if that is in the numbers as well, that will be returning to the first grade next year. They went to private kindergarten because of the pandemic and the private schools not starting on hybrid like we did.
Have they committed to coming to Sandy Hook next year? Do you have a commitment for them?
I don't know. Well, public school, you don't really have a commitment, but yes,
I understand.
Told us that it was for the year. Whether they've fallen in love where they are, I can't tell you.
You're speaking over me. Dr. Gombos, my point is, my question was, and I think it was a reasonable question. If we're using 67 as the actual number, but we're using a projection for the following year, how do you get from 67 to 86? And I think if I understand your response, Dr. Gombos, is that kids went to private kindergarten. So you're going to have an additional 20 kids that come out of private kindergarten to go to public first grade.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse the issue. We've always used the projections moving forward. That's what we've done. We've not rolled numbers necessarily. We've always looked at the projection. That's why we have projections done. Because yes, how many times have I come in the summer and asked for new teachers, and when it's even gone beyond that? So you were correct the first time, Mr. D'Elia, that we do look, we go from, what it is what it is in the actual, but we still have to be mindful of the projections that we have moving forward.
Just to add, I think we do always do that, but it looks a little bit more odd this year because of the drastic change a lot of us have had. I began in August. Hawley began with 301 students.
Yeah.
And I now have 279. So when those families left, as Dr. Gamba said, there's no guarantee, but many of them said, I'm either keeping my child out this year, I'm homeschooling for 1 year, we're going to this private school for 1 year. Their plan was to return. We're hoping they return.
Right.
But I think that's why it's such a big discrepancy this year, Mr. Delia, and I think that it just stands out as odd.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question. I just thought it was odd when I was trying to figure out, because that's where we're adding teachers. And I think, Mr. Moretti, I appreciate your explanation. And I was just trying to understand that jump. And I'm certain next year when it's full time. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Geisler.
Just to add on historical context, because I guess I'm the grandfather of the group in some ways. This year's kind of an anomaly, kind of like how we used to have half-day kindergarten. Some people in this pandemic kept their kids out and went somewhere else that was full day or went to a private place. In the past, they wouldn't join us. They'd start the registration process, realize that we're still half-day K. They'd go somewhere else and come back in first grade. And our numbers used to spike out of nowhere in first grade. It was because of that. It was a wild card. So I think in some ways, like if I can put it in a historical context, that's the wild card this year, except it's the pandemic. So I know in my case, I have 81 students right now. And we added a fifth section going into this year. And I had 6 or 7 that said, no, we're going to do this for now. So just kind of gauging the way they worded their withdrawal as one element is how we place them for the next year. So if they just said not coming, I kind of kept them at K. If they went to a full day K private program, I moved them up to grade 1.
Thank you.
So, Mr. D'Elia, I've similarly had the same question ever since we've been getting the enrollment reports every month, because the enrollment has been very different from what the projections were, at least at Holly and Sandy Hook School. They've been very far off, and I've been wondering how we're going to manage that for this budget, because it does make it incredibly challenging with knowing that we've got a booming real estate market, which makes things, I think, even more difficult, because I don't think that was considered as part of the projections that Peter Prouda did. But also, how do you account for the students that have unenrolled? And I see the challenge in how to predict what the enrollment is going to be next year. So this is a great discussion. I think this is, I think it's important we understand it. Yeah, Mr. D'Elia, did you want to?
The whole point of my line of questioning here is that I want to make sure the schools are properly staffed. And what if we, I just want to make sure that we're properly planning to staff the schools, because the children's success is paramount. And I think we can all agree on that. And I want to make sure that if we're making predictions, that our predictions are going, I just want to make sure we're being diligent in our predictions of population and staffing so that we can properly serve the children, I guess, is my overall goal. And when I see numbers jump like that, I want to make sure that we're not missing something somewhere else or overcounting here and not, you know what I mean? So that's my whole line of thinking here. So that's all I have to say about this point. Thank you.
Ms. Zukowski?
Yeah, so that was my first point, was that Sandy Hook was going to see first grade increase by 28% from the 2020-21 kindergarten class. And it seems excessive. But then I was told that we were told that there were 66 families that disenrolled their students, which means that there's going to be 66 plus some number, because each family may have 1+ students. If we could get a list of, where these students disenrolled from, it would, I think, add clarity to our view of page 44, which is showing us the staffing. But also a question is, if a child was going to, when do parents make a decision whether to enroll their children in kindergarten or not? Would it be prior to the pandemic? Or would it be after it was clear that things were not looking good? In other words, would all of the kindergartners who should have come or would have come without a pandemic, did they all disenroll, or were there some who made the decision prior to calling out that they had kindergartners?
That's a great question, Mrs. Zukowski. Our kindergarten enrollment process actually begins this time of year. The advertisements start to go in the newspapers, the letters go home, the preschools start passing out information, and we start on the website. Parents start registering for next year. Under normal circumstances in February, we normally do a district kindergarten night for the parents. We're going to be meeting to see what that looks like this year. We might do more low-key individual school presentations. Then usually the beginning of the beginning of March, end of March, each school begins their week-long registration process, where we then actually bring the families in and we gather those numbers. And that's where we really get a very good sense of what our numbers are. So we had done all that last year, and then COVID hit right after, or right in the middle of that process. And we were really getting calls. I would say I was getting calls May all the way through 2 days before school started, with parents sharing what their decisions were for this school year. So I think it'll begin with us starting to collect those registrations for next year to get a sense of, are these numbers rebounding? I think each school, like I know which of my kindergartens said they're going to stay home one more year, and I'm assuming they're going to register as kindergartners next year. And I know the ones that said, we're going to go somewhere else and then come back for grade 1.
Okay. So thank you very much. That's quite clear. Dr. Rodriguez?
Yes, so I can tell you, because I have the numbers of those who disenrolled by school, not necessarily by grade. So we had 11 at Holly, 11 at Sandy Hook, 13 at Middlegate, 20 at Hedda Meadow. Reed had 6. The middle school had 4, and Newtown High School had 2. That was the total of 67. If you take this number, this is just an kind of an aside. If you actually add this number to these actuals, you get 4,006. That's 39 plus 67, which is extremely close to the 2021 Prouda prediction of 4,010. So, and I think Tanya put together, it looks like we've been on an average decline of about 2.89%. But again, we just talked this evening about getting another projection done. But this was not the year to do it because the numbers are so skewed. So just so you know, we can actually break that down by grade level, but I just wanted you to know what it was like at each of the schools. Again, I think I stated when I got to enrollment, that this is a different year. I don't know how many discussions we had with every single principal, to your point, Mr. D'Elia, that we just didn't move to the projection from the actual. We looked at a lot of factors that, you had to land on a number that we felt was as close as we're going to get. Again, it's always that projection, no matter how you look at it. And this year is extremely different than any other year we've had. So.
Okay. Now, those numbers you gave were families, not students, right?
These were the disenrolled students.
So 67 students then, okay.
Can I just add, there's probably more students, but they left for various reasons, whether they went to a private school. So there could be more on that list or less. Those are the ones that we felt pretty certain about coming back.
And I don't know, I mean, on the balance of that, have we had many students moving into the district? I don't know. I feel like we're getting in the minutia of projecting enrollment. And I think to Dr. Rodriguez's point, it's going to be just incredibly difficult to try to, you can try in many different ways, but it's going to be hard.
Okay, so I'm going to switch schools for a second.
All right, are there any other board members who want to ask questions of our?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Mr.
I do.
Rose?
I have two, but let me do it one at a time here. The first is I heard that at Sandy Hook there is a 0.5 math to be added. At Hawley, a 0.5 math to be added. At Middlegate, a 0.5 reading. So I'm assuming that the other two schools have enough math and Middlegate doesn't have enough reading. But I'm not hearing anything about Head and Meadow. So someone, you don't have to do it tonight, but someone needs to address that because we need to have uniformity here. And I'm sure the reasons that we need these 0.5s are because of the pandemic and when these children return, these specialists, consultants, teachers are going to need that much more help. That's the one question. And the other one was, I know that Brett Nicholson spoke to us about SEL staffing at the elementary schools and how that translates into more staff, whether it, Rebecca spoke to this and Dan D'Elia spoke to it as well, whether it translates into guidance counselors, behavioral interventionists, psychologists, whatever. But I wish someone would also, at some point before the 2nd of February, address all of this so that we know what we're, if we need to add. Thank you.
Mr. Boris, I'll just jump in quickly and say Middlegate already has the 0.5 math position that's being requested by 2 of the other buildings. And we are requesting the additional reading for the increase in needs in that subject area.
And I'm going to follow up too. So thank you for the question. As we were preparing the budget at that time of the year, we really were looking at, and I'm very thankful for, we were able to get some extra reading support this school year into our budget to help with our kids with the reading needs, which was a priority at this time. And I think if I was preparing the budget maybe now at this time of the year, looking at the survey supports that students are receiving, I could see advocating for that now, but at the time of budget preparation, it wasn't something in the forefront of our minds at Head Meadow because we hadn't gone through the first round of survey process yet, and we hadn't discussed all of our students with their math needs at this time of the year. We didn't have our NWEA results yet too, so we look at all those factors too when we're looking at supporting our students. But we are thankful for having that extra support.
Okay. And does anybody want to speak to the social emotional learning staffing. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure I understand the question, John, but maybe somebody else did.
Do you recall when Brett Nicholson spoke?
Yes. What is your question about the staffing?
My question is, do we need more staffing for SEL in the elementary schools? And what does it look like if we do need it?
Okay.
And I believe that Rebecca and Dan D'Elia also spoke to this, I believe. I may be wrong. Anyway, it's something to be considered because he mentioned it.
Okay, maybe I'm gonna write these down, and it's getting late in the evening and we have more presentations to come, and I want to make sure that we get all of our questions in. So I'm writing down those two questions. Are there other questions that we want to ask of our elementary school principals that maybe we can ask and then have them write down answers and send back to us so that we can move through? Yes, Ms. Zukowski?
I just want to finish my staffing concern. Head of Meadow right now has 57 students in kindergarten. It is projected to have 56 students in first grade next year, which means we're going to lose a student between kindergarten, an existing student between kindergarten and first grade. Prada said that it was expecting 5 new students to come in to kindergarten to first grade for 2021. So my question is, do you have enough teachers for first grade if you actually get the expected, 4 or 5 students that, keeping your own and then getting the 4 or 5 expected by Prada in first grade?
Our current numbers as of today, we have 59 kindergartners. We've gotten 3 that have moved in the past 3 weeks, with a projected of 1 more moving in next in a couple of weeks, starting school. We didn't have those students prior to that. So when this budget was prepared, those students weren't, we didn't expect them. They were brand new ones we did not expect.
And so that means you basically got 20 kids per class for next first grade, without any more coming in. So you're at the high end of
Yes,
the
20.
class thing. So is it a question of whether you might need another student, another teacher? Because Prouda expected 5 students to come in, but I'm not exactly sure when he would expect them, but typically that you would think come over the summer. So I'm concerned about first grade in Head of Meadow.
Well, thank you. And there's always fluctuations over the summer too, with people moving out, moving in. So we never know that final number.
That's true.
Okay, are there any other? Yes, Mr. Cruson?
I think I just want to say, because we keep bringing up the projection that was made, but that was prior to any of this. And as we pointed out, there have been issues, I guess, for lack of a better term, with enrollment this year, and we don't know how that's going to affect the projection. I think getting too hung up on the projection could put us in trouble. Because as we pointed out, we've had people who have disenrolled who we hope are probably coming back, or at least said originally they were coming back. You alluded to the booming real estate market, which we've seen. We've seen the reports of people just in general leaving cities to get to more rural areas. So we don't know all of these numbers are going to be tough for anyone to gauge. And I think the projections probably are going to be wrong one way or the other. So I want to caution about getting too hung up using that projection that, while we'd love to think it was correct, has obviously been influenced by a major event. So I do think I appreciate the caution that everyone's putting into making sure we have staffing right, but I think it's going to be kind of a guesswork no matter what.
Well, we have to give our.
Yeah, Yeah, we don't need, I don't want to continue the debate on how to project enrollment. I think we need to leave that up to the staff, and we can debate it later. I want to be able to move on to folks who are waiting to present to the board. So if there are new questions that you want to get into our elementary principals before we move on, Mr. D'Elia?
Do you have what was the precipice that helped you decide to hire extra math help and not necessarily extra reading help? I guess I just want to make sure if anybody could address that. I want to make sure that the students' needs, especially during this time, I just was wondering if someone could speak to that. Thank you.
We have.
I would be happy to, Mr. D'Elia. I'm sorry, Kathy, are you going? Well, the structure we have right now is there is built in some already reading support to our departments. We all have a language arts coordinator, and under that there's 1 to 2 to some part-time reading teachers and then para educators. Our math department has just the math science specialist and then para educators. So I think we're looking to build up our math department a little bit based on the data we have from COVID saying remote learning was a little bit more difficult for students in the area of math, and the math specialist just not being able to take on not only helping catching up some students that are behind, but also providing enrichment, coaching teachers, doing science, as well as helping to pilot the new math program that's going to be coming down the pike. So I think we're all looking to kind of build some support in that area, if that was helpful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And Dr. Gambos, did you have something to add on that?
No, I just was going to say we all have certified reading teachers. We don't have any certified math teachers besides the specialist.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gambos and Mr. Moretti. Thank you.
All right. Any other board member questions before we move on? All right. Sensing none. Thank you so much, Dr. Gambos, Mr. Moretti, Mr. Napolitano, and Mr. Geisler for being here with us and sharing good information. And we'll get any further questions to you before we make final decisions on the budget. Thank you. All right, so that'll bring us to the Reed Intermediate School budget. And Dr. Correa, you're here with us to talk about that. Did you want to give us a statement of summary, something to start off with?
I sure do. I do. It's nice to see you, Dr. Koo and Dr. Rodriguez and Board of Ed and everyone on the meeting. I will do my very best to be concise with my highlight as well as my budget proposal for this evening, and hopefully I can answer your questions throughout my presentation as well, so that saves a little bit of time. But of course, if there's any questions that pop up, please let me know. So to begin, similar to the elementaries, I wanted to talk to you about a highlight at Reed. Very exciting, and it directly was from our budget last year. As you know, Spanish has been moving its way up to the intermediate levels, and it finally hit us this year. And we hired Senorita Nicole Justiniano, and she has been a tremendous benefit to our building. She's also working at the elementary levels as well. Nicole has done an amazing job, though. And what's great about it, about having Spanish, is we are really seeing what our students can do and their potential for foreign language. So quickly, I'm going to talk to you about a few notable gains, some progress, and some highlights that are really, really exciting that we're seeing in Spanish right now. Currently, Spanish has moved to 5th grade, and next year we're excited about its progression to 6th grade. So we'll begin with some highlights. I'm very excited to report that of our 300 students, every student has passed Spanish for the first quarter. It is a pass-fail class, but we're very excited that all students have passed for the first quarter. Grades this quarter include really assessing vocabulary and seeing where our students came from. Again, they began in kindergarten and they progressed all the way up to here. So our first marking period really focused on a review of looking at names and numbers and birthdays and colors and shapes and months. And, it was really great because the students, again, have had so much reinforcement over the years with this. It really allowed them to build their confidence in knowing a foreign language and being proud of sharing what they were aware of. What's great, we've noticed in the past 4 months, just a small progression period, is that our speaking and written application of Spanish has really increased. And what I mean by that is students are expressing and verbally answering questions in Spanish. And we've seen an increase in their written abilities as well, too. And those are some really great progress points that we're proud of. When we think about, the topics to come this year, because we still have half a year left, our Spanish teacher is very excited that she's going to be introducing new items to them. And they're going to be talking about geography and the 5 senses. They're going to be talking about locations, for example, houses and buildings and places within the houses and buildings, and really connecting it geographically to our maps. The students are very excited that they're going to be moving towards fairy tales and myths, and that's really exciting because they're going to get to compare and contrast different myths and fairy tales that are present in different places of the world, or told through different places of the world. So we're really, really excited about that. One notable thing I'm very proud of, and I didn't know it was going to happen this way, is that there has been a really direct correlation, or direct alignment, I should say, with Spanish and integrating the other content areas. Senorita Justiniano came to us with some experience before, speaks Spanish very well, and she's excited to be a collaborator and team player in our building. And what she's done successfully has really integrated mathematics, social studies, and literacy from our reading classes and our current curriculum into her Spanish class. And she really works hard to try to do that. So, for example, what our 5th grade students are seeing in their curriculum and their academic classes, Senorita Justiniano is trying to present in Spanish as well, which I think the kids get really excited about. She's also done so this year with Project Adventure and Health. And those are 2 unified arts classes that she's really trying to integrate as well. She told me when we spoke that she's looking forward to next year. She's going to be working on our summer curriculum for 6th grade. And what's great is she'll have the same students next year. And that's wonderful because she knows where they left off, where they need to go. And she's really excited about working with our secondary level Spanish teachers and support staff, because we want to make sure that our students are not only prepared for Newtown Middle, but really have a great advantage when they get to high school and diving into the foreign language. And again, that fits in with our goals for our district about expanding foreign language and really looking at that foreign language. So we're really excited about that. And that was something that was added to the budget last year. And I appreciate the board doing that and having trust in us to really expose our kids even more to the Spanish culture. But we look forward to 6th grade, and we look forward to adding a lot to it. So that's a highlight from Reed I really wanted to share with everybody. Our kids are loving it. They're excited. And what's great is they're really engaged. When I had the opportunity to observe Nicole, the kids are just confident and excited, and they're curious, and they just love hearing about different cultures and different places in the world, and the reason for certain things that have come. So we're really excited about expanding Spanish to next year. And I'll talk about Spanish a little bit in my proposal for next year, as well as Dr. Rodriguez addressed, and the need for addition at Reed in Spanish. So I'll move into my budget proposals for next year. I think going back to what Dr. Rodriguez said, I took to heart a lot of what she said, because that is really how I approach this year's budget. Now going into my 2nd year with the Newtown Public Schools, I've had a great opportunity to really live through last year's budget and see, get a pulse on Reed Intermediate School and see what we really need there. And I feel I've done a good job of that. The budget was, considering the economic times and, of course, the pandemic, as many people have mentioned. But first and foremost, whenever I create a budget, it has to be to the needs of the students. And I feel I really, hopefully, will explain that to you in my proposal tonight. As everyone has talked about, and Mr. Cruson talked about it last, about the enrollment. We know the enrollment is at a certain place right now. What I can confidently say is the enrollment at Reed has been increasing, which we're excited for. We're excited more students are coming to Reed. Reed is a natural place for people to join, especially since it's a 5-6 school. We have parents sometimes wait until they get to that level to either join our district, move to our district, but we certainly do see an increase just in the last few years. And from what I've seen when Mrs. Uberti was our principal there too, same thing. The summer brings forward a lot of new registrations. As Dr. Rodriguez shared, we were really excited. In total, we have welcomed 43 students just this summer on. And we have another one starting February 1st. I just heard today. So we have one that's in the registration pool that our guidance secretary is going to be working with. That was similar to last year too, not as many, but again, over 20 students typically have joined during the summer months. We're very busy with testing and getting our students enrolled. That does lead to the first, and I guess my requests are quite simple in the fact that they're staffing related. As Dr. Rodriguez shared, we are requesting two new sixth grade teachers for next year. Currently, we are expecting 312 students in sixth grade, and to that point, we want to make sure that our class sizes are not at 26, as they will be if we don't add new staffing. We really want them at the 22, 23 level. And in all honesty, I actually see that even going higher. So I feel in the needs of the students, this is something that we certainly need to do. And of course, as Dr. Rodriguez shared, when I joined the district last year, we always have to keep the economy in mind and the economic stressors in our community and budgets. And we have to think very creatively about our staff and how we're using that staff. And of course, a great deal of thought went about fifth grade for next year too. And the decision was made with confidence that we should not rearrange fifth grade teachers and move them to sixth grade, because we would be dealing with the same kind of problem next year and having a very high fifth grade population, most likely. And class size, I would say, in each classroom. Last year, I remember that was a question that I believe 3 of the board members asked me about the concern for this year in sixth grade and high class sizes. And that was something I told you last year. I remember it would be something I'd always keep a pulse on and making sure. And that's something Dr. Rodriguez and I have been in contact with about since I started. We did add 2 new fifth grade teachers this year because we kept that pulse and we saw that our classes were getting bigger and bigger. And we appreciate you all approving that. And we did add 2 new fifth grade teachers for this year. So the first request would be to add 2 new sixth grade teachers for next year. That would be 7 cluster teachers and 14 teachers in sixth grade. Again, that would leave us to 22 to 23 per classroom, which I feel is a fair number. And again, we have lots to do next year. We have students that obviously are going to have some learning gaps. So when I think about students, I couldn't think of having 26 or 27 in a classroom. I just think that is not the best way to go, especially with a lot of the work that we have to do for next year. And as I shared earlier, we had, over 40 students join us since July 1 on. And as Tanya shared earlier, 6 of those students we did leave for the pandemic that we expect to return. And those were conversations that I had with the parents. And they said that they're actually homeschooling for this year, but they do have every intention of returning for next year. There are a few more, but those are the 6 that I was able to get a confirmation for returning verbally. The second request that I had obviously is Spanish. And as I just talked about Spanish last, we are moving Spanish to sixth grade. We're excited about the curriculum development. Mrs. Uberti has put funding aside so that curriculum will be written this summer. Our Spanish teacher is very, very excited that she's going to be able to take what she has done this year with the students and in reflection, write that sixth grade curriculum with the support of secondary education supervisors and department heads in our district. So we're excited about seeing Spanish move. This is a level where our students have a lot of ability. They have a lot of confidence and they take a lot of pride in speaking a second language. It's the first time I've ever observed a secondary language as a principal. It's really exciting and it's really fun to be in there and to see those wheels moving when kids are thinking about the questions that are being asked. And again, I think that we hired the right person to make those wheels turn and who does a nice job of balancing both Spanish and English in her instructional lessons each day to make sure students are feeling successful. So we are excited about moving Spanish to 6th grade, and that, of course, as Dr. Rodriguez shared, would add to our staffing needs of a 0.33 FTE. And that means that our entire building, 5 and 6, will have Spanish next year as a unified art. Other than that, those are the 2 staffing requests that I have for next year, but a lot of thought has gone into next year, a lot of thought about class size, a lot of thought about the academic instruction that we need to provide students, whether it was a typical year and now so with the pandemic and recovering from it and moving forward to really fill in those literacy and math gaps. And again, making sure that we're really taking advantage of the staff that we have and making sure that we're really meeting the needs of each of our students. So with great thought, that's the budget presentation that I have for you tonight. I hope I can answer questions for you. And if I can, I certainly will find those answers for you, but I'd be happy to talk to you about anything else that I've laid out in the budget or any questions about Read that you have, just generally speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's open it up to questions. Any more on? I think if there's any more questions about enrollment, I think we should probably wait on that until our meeting after all the presentations are done to talk about enrollment, because I can see this a recurring theme. Mr. D'Elia?
Thanks for your presentation, Dr. Correa. First thing, we need to fix the budget book. It doesn't say Dr. Correa on the first page. It should say Dr. So I was, the elementary schools highlighted a need for extra math help. And unless I missed it, I don't see anything in your presentation that would lead down that same path. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that, if you could speak to that for the board. Thank you.
Yep. Absolutely. That was something I spoke with Dr. Rodriguez about last year, coming into the district, looking at a lot of, and speaking with Mrs. Uberti when I transitioned in last year about the math scores and the ELA scores. Our focus, unfortunately, before the pandemic was math, and to really make sure, and it still is our continued focus, to make sure that we increase those math scores. But really, again, it's about student abilities and their understanding and whatnot. What we did creatively is to not ask for another person, because I didn't feel that it was needed. We have 3 paraprofessionals that are in our language arts department. And what we did this year, unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful in hiring because there are, as you know, open positions in the building. And I really think that in the district, and I think that's due to the pandemic, as we know, we have a language arts paraprofessional, Mr. D'Elia, who we're having move to the math department once they're finally hired. That person makes up for that gap area. So we'll have 3 paraprofessionals in math, 2 in ELA, but our goal is to make sure that they're dual trained. So when we do need that support in ELA, that person can also move over to ELA. For example, if our scores in a few years in ELA needed some work or some support, that person can either target the tier 2 or tier 3 intervention. But what we decided last year when I met with Dr. Rodriguez is that I really needed to, again, get a pulse on the building, see where we were at. And, hopefully I keep telling this will pass, as I keep telling our staff at Reed. And I'm very confident that eventually we will find somebody to hire in that position. It may be at the end of the school year, maybe over the summer, but that person will be assigned to the math department. So that's why I do not need to ask for support there. It's a great question, though.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, Ms. Zukowski?
I'm just going to make this short. So basically, I had some of the same questions for you that I had for the elementary principals, but all of these questions have been sent to Dr. Rodriguez. So I'm just going to ask that, I'm sure that they probably will be sent through, because in many cases, it's just a question of comments to make the language in the budget itself more broader and richer in terms of what your program is.
Of course. And that's something I think that now that you brought that to my attention, is probably something that should be looked at each year and just fine-tuned as we make additions to our curriculum and whatnot as well. But those questions, I'll certainly take a look at those too and see what I can do to really make it more transparent to families in the district. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for the feedback.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Delia.
I know that you said not to say anything, but I'm concerned about enrollment, and I'm not concerned about fewer kids. I'm concerned about more kids coming than we anticipate. And I just want to make that comment. Thank you. Because I think that, in looking at Dr. Correa's proposal, those class sizes at 22, I don't want to see class sizes at 25. And I'm just concerned about, the enrollment that we're going to be seeing next year. If it is, I think we're going to see a bump. Thank you.
That is, I agree with you, Dan, that it's something that's very, as Dr. Rodriguez knows, it's something I'm always watching. Every time, every enrollment that comes through has to come to me from the guidance secretary to look at. And that's how I happen to find out about the February 1st enrollment that's coming. That new student is joining us. So it's something I'll certainly keep an eye on, and that's what Dr. Rodriguez and I talked about. And we were able to catch the need for that 5th grade cluster that needed to be added. Once we saw the pouring enrollment, I spoke with Lori, and it was something we addressed immediately. With your permission, we were able to hire 2, I feel, great 5th grade teachers in additions to our staff, but I will certainly keep an eye on entering 5th and entering 6th all summer long, but definitely a great point to make, Dan. Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions or comments from board members? I don't think so. All right. Well, likewise, it is good to see you at one of our meetings, although not in person. It is just good to see your face.
Well, this will pass, as I tell the staff at Reed, and we'll all be together again soon safely. So, but I really appreciate your support and your questions, your feedback, and thank you again for your trust in my leadership. I appreciate it, and thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here and sticking with us with this late meeting. And so that'll bring us to our middle school. And Mr. Einhorn, hello.
Greetings, everybody. I'd like to start my part of the middle school presentation with some middle school points of pride, or highlights, if you will. There are 2 programs at the middle school that Dr. Rodriguez and the board have supported in the past years, and they've become such an important part of the middle school. They are our RISE program, or Reaching Independence Through Structured Education, and our SAIL program, which is Supportive Alternative Individualized Learning. These 2 programs help support our outstanding learners that need specialized approach to teaching and learning. We're so fortunate to have those programs at the middle school, and it's through the board's support. These programs have allowed us to keep many students in our school rather than potentially outplacing some of them. So it's great to have that. And in connection with those programs, we're looking for the board's support with our staffing requests for 2 additional special education teachers. While that's not specifically part of the middle school budget and falls into pupil services, nevertheless, these programs have a direct impact on our school. The addition of these 2 positions will allow us to have special education case managers connected to each one of the clusters, as I outlined in my presentation on the middle school schedule a week or so ago. With that being said, we'll be able to provide additional support to kids in special education on clusters with the addition of co-taught classes in math and language arts. So we're very, very excited about that opportunity. The middle school, like other schools in the districts, have been asked to bring forth a budget that supports our students' academic, social, and emotional growth while being fiscally responsible. We've had to make some difficult decisions regarding staffing, but we've done this in a way that still maintains all the programs and opportunities for students and actually enhances those. We gave you a good summary of all of the new things that our middle school new master schedule will allow us to do. So we're very, very excited about that. And that will allow us to be very flexible in the upcoming years relative to student population changes, which is really important because one of the things you don't want to be doing is changing your schedule and then realizing that you needed to change it yet again due to changes in population. So we're very, very excited about that. So next year we'll have 3 clusters at both 7th and 8th grade, and they'll be comprised of 5 teachers, as Dr. Rodriguez mentioned earlier, with the addition of a world language teacher to each cluster. So this will allow us to offer world language every single day to our students. So we're very, very excited about that. And that follows the, the progression that Dr. Correa spoke about at the Reed Intermediate School. So this is a perfect time for us to adopt that and move that forward. And then again, preparing the students for high school as well. We've made some significant changes in our staffing with reductions and then asking for additions as well. But one of the things that I did want to point out is that while we're reducing a reading position for next year, with the addition of 2 special education teachers, a lot of the support that we're currently giving those students would now move to our clusters with our case managers. So we're actually providing additional support in the areas of reading for next year. And then in our budget, we're also asking for an additional math interventionist. This will allow us to have that support. Not only we have one person doing that now, that would give us a second person so that we would have 1 math interventionist at both 7th and 8th grade. We're also very excited about the 2 unified arts positions that we proposed in our middle school master schedule. And we're really looking forward to having our students and community have some say into what those courses will actually look like. So there's a lot of changes that are happening at the middle school. Some, obviously changes that reflect declining enrollment. But I think, again, with our new master schedule, we're positioning ourselves really well for a number of years into the future to not only be flexible with population changes, but also to, again, provide those extra things that students really need, especially in the world of world language. And then also, obviously, the supports that the special education teachers can provide, and obviously the changes or the addition of a math interventionist. So those are the highlights here for the middle school. I guess I had a little bit of an advantage presenting to the board a week ago so that folks kind of get a better sense of what the middle school master schedule will look like, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Great, thank you. Are there any board member questions? Yes, Mr. D'Elia.
John, you can go first. Go ahead, John. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go. You called on me.
All right, go.
Robert's rules. Mr. Einhorn, I noticed that you're cutting a reading teacher, and I just wanted to make sure that's again to the same question I asked Dr. Correa. Is that out of a necessity for the math, and could you just speak to that, please?
Yes. So what we're doing is we're restructuring our reading department. So essentially, what we're doing is that many of our students in special education were receiving reading support from a reading teacher. Now that support is going to be switched over to a case manager, and it's going to be done directly on cluster in the co-taught English class. So we're very excited about that change. So this allows us to make that adjustment because there's going to be far fewer students getting direct support in reading as we have this year through a reading teacher, and that's just going to be shifted over to the case manager. So that actually allows us to provide a higher level of support in the areas of language arts.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Voros, did you have a question?
Yeah. Yes. My question revolves around, and I understand obviously how this works because of the great presentation that Tom did in presenting the schedule. It deals with the element of the unified art positions and how all of that is going to be eventually sorted out and decided. So having said that, I want to focus on particularly two items. One is the project adventure and seeing if possibly that can be moved out of phys ed and it can be a standalone, which the kids, no question about it, love, and it would model what Reed is doing now. And then the other is, which is near and dear to my heart, is Project Challenge. And what's going to happen to that schedule so that the children have a class in gifted education that is not done during lunch or competes with anything else. So I'm anxious, not tonight, but to hear about it before the 2nd of February, so that if we have to add a position or whatever to make it easier for your new schedule to work for those children, we need to know that so we can make decisions. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Voris, for your support on those great ideas. Much appreciated.
So before, when we have our next discussion, for the general discussion, Mr. Voros, you want information about Project Challenge and Project Adventure and how that fits into the schedule, the new schedule, and whether they're...
Yes, that would help. And I know that Mrs. Uberti is working with Tom and his committee to sort all this out. But it's key that it's done so that the programs are so that the programs so that the programs, especially Project Challenge, can be restored to what it used to be when the kids were coming as a class and not during lunch or learning lab or recess or whatever.
Okay.
Very, very important that we don't go backwards, because now we have this new schedule. So now's the time for us to do this correctly.
Agreed. So the question revolves around whether we would need additional resources or whether the current resources are appropriate, and we'll follow that up at a future meeting.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other board member questions? I don't think so. Any enrollment questions? No, I don't want to, not enrollment, not right now. That'll be another follow. We have a whole meeting with, allowing for these follow-up questions. So that'll be a good time for that. And it's getting late. So I want to thank everybody who came and stayed late with us tonight for the discussions about the budgets at the schools, and for Dr. Rodriguez's presentation of the overall budget. And we look forward to further discussions about the budgets in future nights as this goes on. So thank you. All right, so that'll bring us to our COVID-19 update. Do you have any updates for us, Dr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, just very briefly, because I know it's late. I'll focus. I already talked about us coming back and, how we're proceeding very cautiously and monitoring cases, not only at the school, but in the community. But I really wanted to focus on the concerns with the vaccinations for our teachers and the schedule. As you know, teachers were waiting for confirmation from the state as being put in the category of essential workers, which is that 1B category, related to vaccination rollout. But we're not yet in the group confirmed to receive vaccinations at this time. The state of Connecticut actually sent out a note. It was late on Friday, I believe, asking school districts not to upload any of the staff until further direction or directive to do so. Now, just know that we follow directions, and I want to give a shout out to Suzanne DeRamo, who's handling much of this, along with the town side doing the same, because all of our nurses, that was the first group as essential workers on the medical side, and to be put in. And so they were, we followed directions, and our nurses were vaccinated. This caused quite a stir, I think, and some mix up, because some districts actually received confirmations in advance, and had made, some teachers had even made appointments because employee lists were inadvertently uploaded. And so I did send a communication to all of our staff just to let them know, along with the DPH letter that was sent. The state of Connecticut, under Charlene Tucker's signature, sent an additional communication, which I will share. Again, it says the same thing, that they're, until further notice, we will not be uploading any employee lists, because they have to get through not just the 75 and older, but now the 65 and older. That's the population first. And I believe Governor Lamont also spoke to that yesterday or today. So I just wanted to know, wanted you to know how that all unfolded, and it did raise quite a stir. I have spoken to the union, Tom Karosky, on this even before it happened, because we were made aware that this could cause some sort of a frustration in some of our teachers in that way. So I think we're good now. I think the sooner they roll this out, the better. Of course, everyone's anxious, and thank you, Dr. Koo, because I know you put together a communication of your own to speak to this with the governor. But as soon as we are told to upload our employee list, we will do so. But that's it. Under COVID, I think I've spoken enough about the dashboard, and I just want to again thank our teachers and our staff and our leaders for welcoming students back and for doing it in a safe manner. I'm hearing a lot just this evening and all day about how very, very careful the teachers were, and also how they were asking for the student feelings about coming back into classroom and how they could feel safe. And I just thought that was incredibly, just incredible on their part. So, and thank you, Dr. Longobuco and Mr. Einhorn, for doing the same and really managing that with your staff and making them feel more comfortable. I know it's not easy, but I think it's the right thing to do. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Do board members have any questions? Yes, Mr. Dalia?
I got a communication from the governor through my organization that says the teachers are looking at end of February, early March now. And I was wondering if the board could draft a letter as a board, because personally, I think it's ridiculous. I think the teachers need to get vaccinated. We're on, is there something that we can do to show our support as a board for our staff? Because I think somebody needs to be kicked in the pants on this one, and I'm happy to write a letter as a board if you think that'll have any impact at all. Or I know that you wrote a letter, Dr. Koo. I just, the teachers are working hard. They're out there. They're and I just think this option needs to happen as quickly as possible. That's all.
I agree with you completely, and that it is really disheartening that teachers are being put behind the other groups. Our teachers, teachers, paraeducators, bus drivers. it is disheartening. I think the decision is being based on the epidemiology and the idea that the higher risk, the groups that are highest risk for being in the hospital are the ones that are being given the vaccination first. And that's the reasoning that the governor gave today. I'd be happy to sign on to another letter if you want to put one together. Yes, Mr. Delia.
Yeah, I'm just like, for example, what if we have a teacher who has high blood pressure, or a teacher, you know, those teachers should be considered as well. And I think that it, you know, maybe I'm happy to work on a letter if anybody else wants to do it, if the board is up for it. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I just, that's my thought.
Do you want to, let's see, would board members want to sign on to a letter asking the governor, do you want to, or is there interest in doing that? If I see a couple heads nodding, and so, yeah, I mean, you'll, similarly, I put this out.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
so
am.
it sounds like there's enough interest to do it. So why don't you work on that, and then we can sign it each individually. I don't know, that's hard in this time, but it is, I mean, the timing of it needs to be sooner rather than later. Right?
I'll do my best to get something started.
Okay. I have a question about, do we have a large, I remember at one point, Dr. Rodriguez gave us an update on the number of students that were in cohort D. Do you know off the top of your head what that is at this point?
Well, the last report was just over 309, and I know there were a few more added on to that. I don't have that number with me, but I can get that to you. But the last report, just before we reopened 7 or brought back 7 through 12, it was 309, I think was the exact number. Am I correct on that? I think I shared that with all the principals as well.
That's all right.
Yeah, it was, well, that was, I'm sorry, it was 709.
Yeah.
Thank you, I'm kidding. It's late, I'm sorry. It was 709, and it was just about 300 at the high school, correct?
Okay.
Correct. So that was the last report, and that was right before we came back. I don't know if there were a few more since then, but that was right before we returned 7 through 12.
Okay.
So it's over 710, just about 710.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Delia?
We have a lot of increases in our budget for next year, and I'm wondering, are any of them COVID related, or is there any way that we can tap into a COVID? It's just something to think about, not necessarily something we can discuss now, but you know, we're needing a lot of extra support because of COVID, and I'm wondering is there anything we can do? I know that we had that large non-lapsing or that large surplus last year, Dr. Rodriguez, but I'm wondering, is there something we can do, or will there be funds, or have you heard anything?
Yeah, so if we think about the next round that I talked to you, which is the ESSER Fund Part 2, which is very similar to CARES. I believe personnel, and that goes to 2023. So I believe some of that, am I correct, Tanya, can be used for personnel. It wasn't able, they're a lot more flexible now on the uses for that funds. The only thing is we can't really predict that in this budget when we created it. So, and we don't know what that will look like. We've been told it will probably get 2 times as much as we got last time. So it could help a little. It probably won't make a major impact, but it certainly will be something that we can look at when it comes. We just don't know that. It's not confirmed yet how much we will get.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right. Any other COVID related questions, comments? No. Okay. We'll move on then to, where are we? new business and discussion and possible action on a one-year only teaching position for the Newtown Middle School and Newtown High School. So why don't we wait for a motion and have Dr. Rodriguez talk about this, and then we can decide if somebody'd like to make a motion on it. Dr. Rodriguez, did you want to give us a?
Yeah, so this is actually, I think a little, we're trying to think out of the box here on this. We have had a need, as you know, for more support across the district. That's why we were thankful when some community members stepped up, parents, to help us this year with the substitute teaching. But we've had ongoing issues with the support at the secondary level for coverage. Daily substitutes and building subs are helping, but it is clearly not enough. Frankly, there are some subs, and this is not due to the pandemic, who are okay helping and supporting students at the lower levels, but not always as comfortable at the higher level where content can be challenging and somewhat it's a bit intimidating. And that's not my assumption. We've heard that from many of our subs. So, for example, the need is clear at the high school in the area of science. What we'd like to do, and I know I spoke to not only Dr. Longabuco, but Tom Einhorn as well about this. And they were both excited about the idea because it's really putting stress on our teachers to cover classes. And we're really trying to hire more subs and building subs, but what we would like to do in our plan is to hire just for the remainder of this year. So it'd be less than a 1-year contract. First-year teacher, second-year teacher, to help out through the remainder of the year at just the middle school and the high school. So they could be shared. We would want 4 teachers at this level, and this would support the absenteeism that has been occurring, as you know, both short and long term, and take the current stress off of our staff who fill in for their colleagues, especially at the high school. I know when there's a lack of coverage, this has become a daily routine, and I think you've heard that before in the past. So we think that this will inspire more people more individuals out there, first-time teachers who probably finished in the spring during the pandemic and, might not have found a full-time position, and so on and so forth. I think it's a creative way to try to manage the issues that we're having at the secondary level with staff coverage, at least for the remainder of this year.
So I guess we could entertain a motion about approving, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud, something like 4 entry-level teaching positions. Is that right?
And again, it would be prorated, as you know, because by the time they are officially hired, and Tanya can work up some numbers, but again, it just depends on who we hire. And we believe we could, easily do this with what we have. They would be flexible. So there might be a need one day at middle school and less at the high school, or maybe 2 of them can do science at the high school, because I know that's the need Dr. Longabuco emphasized to me. At the same time, at the middle school, there might be a need to teach an English class or a social studies class or math. So they'd be very flexible teachers, and they would work like building subs, but there'd be a lot more flexibility there and some content behind them as well. And it would be, I think, a more enticing, it would entice more people, I think, to come forward.
All right. Is anybody interested in making a motion?
I move to hire four, is it just through the end of the year, Dr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Four, I move to hire 4 teachers through the end of the year to supplement as needed in any of the schools here in Newtown.
Well, only
Oh,
But it's only the middle and the high school for these
only,
teachers.
oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
Yep.
I'll say that again. I move to hire 4 teachers through the end of the year to help fill the need at Newtown Middle School and Newtown High School.
Second.
So Mr. Delia makes a motion, Mr. Cruson seconds the motion. Did either of you want to speak to that? Yeah, Mr. Delia?
Is there a budget? Do we have the money in the budget for this, Tanya? I think Dr. Rodriguez probably already said that, and I might have been yawning or fading because I'm.
I know.
Yeah, we worked up some preliminary numbers and I support it. I believe our budget will be able to support it for the year.
And again, this is just through the end of the year.
And these are entry level positions?
Certified
Yes.
teachers, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you want to speak to the motion, Mr. Delia or Mr. Cruson?
Yeah. Dan, do you want to speak to it?
No, I have a question though, but I don't need to speak.
May I speak to it first?
Yes.
I'll be brief. I'm in support of this motion because the teachers are going to need the support, and it's in the best interest of the children to make sure that we have certified personnel in the buildings when needed during a time a time of uncertainty. And I think that this is in the best interest of the children and the community. And I'm in support of the motion. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Cruson, you had a question?
We've been trying to hire paraprofessionals, people to substitute. I mean, we've been trying to hire across multiple areas all year. Why do you think this is going to be easier to fill or more enticing than any of these other positions we've been trying to fill all year?
Well, because there are a lot more when we're talking to the universities of students who have graduated and they're first-time teachers, and then the pandemic hit, they haven't found jobs. It's a little different when you're talking about a substitute at a different, there's a different rate of pay and a different level of education needed in those areas. So I think we'll be able to find the 3 or 4 teachers that we're looking to find, just in talking to the nearby universities and other districts who have, we've had some success in hiring teachers even now during the pandemic. That's how we filled some of our positions. So for some reason, it's a little bit more difficult with the subs, and it's far more difficult for some reason at the secondary level. As I pointed out, some of the subs just are, they're more comfortable at the lower level without the content.
Okay. I mean, I'm in support of trying this. I'm just skeptical of how easy it's really going to be to find people to fill them. But I mean, we can always, I have no problem giving it a try, so.
All right, anybody else? All right, I want to say that I'm fully in support of this just because.
Ms. Zukowski has something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Zukowski.
Yeah, so this is clearly COVID related in that the staffing is out absent because of quarantines and the likes of that. So this would fall into the COVID related funding that is necessary to make sure our schools are able to run.
Absolutely.
My question is that when you get to the 7th grade to the 12th grade, I mean, it's really about content area at that point. So teachers specialize. Is it possible, I mean, is your plan to do cross specialized teachers? So you get 1 or 2 who are cross specialized in science and math, and 1 or 2 who are cross specialized in English and social studies? Or is that not going to be possible?
That's more difficult, but if we looked at what our needs, I'm going to be talking with I've talked with Dr. Longabuco, and we'll be talking with Tom at the middle school just to see, we might want to look for 2 general science and maybe a math and an English, if those are, and they're able to work just like subs in many other areas, 7 through 12. But those areas that really we need, that might be longer term, someone who's quarantined, in the science area. So we're going to really put our heads together and discuss what we want to post these as.
Okay, so then what
Cross endorsement is a little more difficult to find, so, but again, we would be thrilled if we found cross endorsed. Of course, we would want that more than anything else.
But what I did hear you say is that even if you're specialized in science and they needed a sub, then a science teacher could go and sub as a math teacher, for example.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, and then did I see Mr. Voros? Did you want to say something? No.
On a vote, so let's go to bed.
Lisa, I didn't hear him.
I don't know. So I'll just finish up by saying that I fully support this. I think that if we're talking about wanting what's best for our we want vaccinations for our teachers. We want to support, you know, everything that they're doing right now. I think this is what we can do to help alleviate some of the stress of being called into other rooms to fill in for others. So I fully support it. All right, anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 And any opposed? None. So that's a unanimous vote. And we are
Thank you.
there. All right. The minutes of January 5th. Do we have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of January 5, 2021.
Second.
All right, Mr. Delia makes the motion, Mr. Cruson seconds. And I don't recall why this is.
Rebecca was absent.
Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
All right, so we have 6 in favor, 1 abstaining, and the motion passes. And that brings us to our second public participation. I don't believe we have any public, but I'll open this up to public. Oh, actually, we do have several numbers. If anybody would like to speak during the second public participation, you can unmute yourself using *6 and address the board, giving us your address and name. And I'm sensing nobody unmuting themselves to address the board, so we will close out public participation. And I'll entertain a motion to get us out.